not used to being up here alone like this, you know? Anything else come in for next month yet?
Yes. Let me just.
Sure, do what you gotta do.
Sorry.
Yeah, but anything else you agree with that?
Maureen, do you have the Wi-Fi passcode here?
When's that?
If you could write it when you get a chance, if you have it.
Like I said, I did that next week. I'm not looking. Okay. All right, I'll hire a team called Gates and see when they're available. Yeah. Okay, sounds good. On the spot? Yep.
Streaming live on YouTube. I have to run back to my office to get the Wi-Fi.
Thank you, Maureen.
Do you need my phone, Maureen?
Rudy, if you don't mind, at 7:30, could you call John on from your
Oh,
phone?
yeah, okay.
And if you need to charge, you can put your phone up on the dais.
Well,
Why are you getting?
we're gonna keep John on here for,
I mean, when
45
you're out,
minutes.
get the Wi-Fi.
Seven thirty. Three, four, five, six, seven. You gotta plug in, Rudy?
yeah, I'm almost running on empty here.
Well, all right, then, I'm almost, you have an Apple phone?
Yeah.
Okay, and I think there's one there, just one for the Apple. I'm almost completely charged, so you can use that.
I have another charger if you need it. You need one?
Well, I have a charger in my car, I forgot to bring it up.
Yeah, I forgot,
She has it.
I forgot to bring mine, but,
I took it from the house and I left it in my car, but it's there, I can get it.
you got one on you, Anthony?
Yeah. USB and you need a box.
I got it.
Thanks. You're welcome. Still waiting for Mark, Kevin, Kevin Hanley, Kelly Carter.
Where am I sitting?
Hey, Tim.
You're in the front.
Tim, you're right here. Okay. All right.
Kevin Turbin's not coming.
Oh, he's not?
John and George are phoning.
pulling John here.
George. We're gonna get started in a few minutes, all right? George?
Yes.
Okay. I guess he should be, gotta be near a microphone, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna put you on speaker.
I'm getting good.
Can you hear me?
Too many go on speaker, you get that. Yeah.
All right. All right. Yeah. All right.
I don't know what's
Okay.
going on, George.
We're getting feedback from these on that somewhere. Maybe we should put these over away from the microphones, but then nobody's gonna hear them.
We have to keep them close to a microphone, or they won't get picked up, right?
Right.
If they speak.
I guess.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Unless we keep them, no one's using that one, Rudy, right there, right?
No.
Maybe we should put them right here now.
All right.
I've had two COVID tests, because I only had a procedure.
You guys both there?
I'll go.
How are you?
I'm here.
Remember sitting in this room back in February talking about it? Good.
We got problems now.
Yeah.
These phones are.
I don't think it's the phone, because
No, I think it's the phones.
Hey, Kevin. How are you?
I was just talking to your dad.
Oh, yeah, I done it.
Yeah, I was talking to him.
Tonight, I
Like,
heard,
he's watching your son, my son. He's like the team guy.
It wasn't happening
Should we
until we
try?
started plugging in all these
Phones?
electronics. Um,
I mean, because if necessary, as long as we have a quorum, we can just get George and John on. Oh, yes?
He said that at the last. He said he was gonna be here.
Hey,
Here's the acoustic engineer. Maybe he can help.
hey, John? John on?
Yes. I'm here.
John?
Yes, I'm here.
Hey, are you planning on recusing yourself?
I thought I could just, to review your thing, so I want.
Oh, okay. No, that's fine. I just, if you, just because we're getting feedback, and we don't know if it's from the phones, if you weren't going to actually participate, then it didn't matter. But let's see if we can figure it out.
And I'm muting myself unless I'm speaking, so there shouldn't be feedback from me.
Okay. All right. Are we waiting? Hey, Mike.
How you doing? Hi, Mike. Hi, Rudy.
Let's start, huh?
Is Mike next to you?
Yeah, Mike, you're right here behind
Right
me.
there?
Yeah, right there.
I'm backing up Anthony.
Back stop.
I got your back.
This is everybody, right?
Oh, yes.
Tell me to spread out my plans.
Okay.
Oh,
All
yeah,
right,
you've
might as
got a
well
great
get going.
spot.
You guys all set? We'll get going? Does everybody has a mic?
No.
Oh, okay.
Everybody's gonna have to speak up a little bit.
Okay.
So that the board can come up.
Okay. All right, we're gonna get going, guys. The September 9th, 2020 work session of the White Cove Planning Board is now in session. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting appears on our annual schedule of meetings. Copy of said annual schedule has been posted on the bulletin board in Memorial Town Hall. Copy has been filed with the Township Clerk, the Record, the Ridgewood News, and the North Jersey Herald and News, all newspapers with general circulation throughout the Township of White Cove. At least 48 hours prior to this meeting, the agenda thereof was similarly posted, filed, and mailed to said newspapers. Members of the public are welcome to be present at this meeting. However, in accordance with Section 7A of the Open Public Meetings Act, participation on the part of the public at this meeting will not be entertained. Can we have a roll call, please, Maureen?
Yes. Ms. Conlon? Here. Mr. Beato?
Here.
Mr. Homechek?
I gotta unmute. Here.
Mr. Fisher?
Here.
Mr. Sietzma?
Here.
Mr. Boonstra?
Here.
Mr. Pervin? Mayor Shanley?
Here.
Mr. Alexandru?
George, can you hear?
I can't hear anything, Rob.
You can't hear anything?
No, I'm just getting a lot of static in the back. That's better.
All right, he's here. And Mr. On is here. Mr. On?
Here.
Chairman Fortunato?
Here. Okay, just, well, thanks for everybody being here tonight. It's the first night we're back in person, so I appreciate everybody, working with the difficult circumstances. Those of you without mics on the board, you just please speak up when you speak so that it can be recorded by the other mics in the room. And everybody's, if you're not speaking, we just ask you to keep your face mask on and just to keep everybody as safe as we possibly can. Okay, so the first item on the agenda.
Rob, if I may interrupt
Yes.
you before you go further, I too want to echo what you said. I want to thank everyone for being here in person tonight. This is our first major board which has met in person. I'd like to welcome, I wasn't here last time, welcome Kelly Conlon to the planning board. And thank Bob Shannon and Rob Fortunato, Maureen Mitchell, and I think Nancy Cole worked on, and Joe Salerno,
Yeah.
for putting this all together so we can do this tonight. And I'm sure it's not going to be perfect, but at least we're here, because an application like this almost has to be done live. So
And the ladies
I'm thanking
downstairs,
everyone.
Denise and
Denise, yes.
Christine, who helped out at the door as well. So thanks for everybody for pitching in.
All right.
I'm sure it'll get easier after this.
Yeah. Thanks,
So,
Rob.
Thanks, Rudy. Okay, so let's go through the agenda for the work session. The first item on the agenda are the work session minutes and the regular business meeting minutes from August 12th. Does anybody have any comments? It was a very brief meeting. Does anybody have any comments on either to start with the work session? Any changes or comments from anybody? No? George or John, do you have any comments or questions on the work session
No,
minutes? Okay.
no.
Moving on to the regular business meeting minutes. Does anybody have any comments, changes, questions on those? Anyone? Okay. Seeing no questions or corrections, can I have a motion to approve both the work session and the regular business meeting minutes from August 12th?
Motion to approve the work session and the public meeting minutes of August 12th are before you.
I'll second that motion.
It was
Anthony?
Mike making the motion and Anthony seconding it.
Ms. Conlon? Yes. Mr. Beato?
Yes.
Mr. Homechek?
Yes.
Mr. Alexandru?
Yes.
Mr. On?
Yes.
Mayor Shanley?
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato?
Yes.
The other board members were absent.
Okay, the only item we have on the agenda this evening is the Galasso Enterprises LLC matter, which is 825 Wyndham Court North, which is an amendment to existing site plan. The applicant proposes to add 32 new parking spaces to the site, which currently has 38 parking spaces, and 13 additional parking spaces will be achieved by restriping the existing parking lot to make a total of 83. Mr. DeGennaro, you prepared a memo on this, correct?
Yes, I did.
You want to bring us through that, please?
Sure, so my original memo dated March 5th, 2020, was revised on September 3rd, 2020, with the revised application information which was prepared by Bruce Whitaker.
Hey, Mark, you may want to take your mask down, just so we can hear you a little more clearly.
I got a mic.
Okay. That may work better. Thanks.
So March 5th, 2020 was my original memo, revised September 3rd, 2020. Received the packet prepared by Bruce Whitaker, dated 3/16/20, which included a summary addendum as well as the revised checklists, and the revised site plan prepared by Rich Wasbrock, dated 7/29/19, and the site plan, preliminary and final site plan, dated January 16/20, last revised March 16th, 2020. So I'll go through the summary. The subject property is located in the L2 light industrial 4-acre zone, contains a 174,248 square foot of land area with a 23,371 square foot principal building. The parcel is non-conforming due to frontage and lot width, front yard setback, parking, and ADA compliance. For me? Based on the information provided, it appears the property currently has 38 defined parking spaces and is non-conforming as 58 spaces are required, including a minimum of 3 ADA compliant spaces. Under the current proposal, the existing parking lot will be expanded to add additional 32 parking spaces, which include 4 ADA spaces, and it will be restriped to create an additional 13 spaces for a total of 83 parking spaces on site. One of the 4 ADA spaces will be van accessible as required. The parking enhancements will bring the parking lot into compliance with applicable codes. There are no proposed changes to the principal building structure or use. The proposal includes lighting improvements, is someone's cell phone maybe near this microphone or something? Sometimes that might do it.
Well, we have two members who are on the phone, on
Yeah.
the cell phone, so that may be
Maybe
the
take
cause.
that speaker away. Or that microphone away, I mean. So the proposal also includes lighting improvements, pedestrian access improvements, landscaping, drainage, and a proposed freestanding directory sign, as well as a proposed dumpster enclosure. The site changes require site plan review and approval by the planning board. The applicant has obtained the appropriate wetlands letter of interpretation from New Jersey DEP, and the site plan reflects the confirmed location of said environmental limitations. The original memo that I submitted back in March of this year had some deficiencies that I picked up for the completeness review. In this memo, you'll see that those deficiencies, whatever has been addressed, has been stricken by a line and identified as being corrected or satisfied. So I'll spare you the agony of going through each and every one of those. The applicant in section 46-40C is requesting a formal waiver for traffic study, and he's also requesting a formal waiver request for environmental impact study. Traffic signage and safety plan has been provided. And we should get the applicant to give testimony as to the proposed use and the estimated number of employees for the facility. The request was for the applicant to provide the parking count. It was corrected and correctly now shows 83 spaces. One item that I identify as being outstanding is the proof of the recording of the letter of interpretation should be provided, and we'll get testimony from Mr. Whitaker if that's been done or it will be done. Lighting and landscape plan. The LED lighting temperatures do comply with the maximum allowable 3,000 Kelvin per our ordinance. The maximum illumination at the property lines are represented to be at 0-foot candles at grade, except in the area of the driveway curb cuts, which is acceptable. And the plan limits tree removals to a total of 7 trees, where previously 15 trees were proposed to be removed. And the plan also includes evergreen screening around the dumpster enclosure in the northwesterly corner surrounding the parking area, which was a concern of the adjacent residential neighbor. And that is all I have.
And Mark, you and I had a chance to talk earlier today. The application cites a variance request for the 3
Yes.
parking spaces for the front yard.
Yep.
Did you have an opportunity to review that in more detail since we spoke?
Yes, I did, and that is accurate. Because the section 186-23I of the ordinance speaks to properties in the L1, L2 zone shall have no parking within the required front yard setback. Being that this building in the L1 zone required, or the L2 zone is required front yard setback of 75 feet, those 4 spaces do lie 80, 81, 82, and 81, 82, 83, and 84, 5 spaces I believe it is, lie within the front yard setback, within that 75 foot. But you also have to consider that there's a cul-de-sac there, so it's part of the, as measured from the cul-de-sac bulb property line. So those spaces do require variance relief from 186-23.
What's the minimum requirement for the distance off the street?
You have to be outside the 70, this front yard setback, so outside the 75 feet.
75 feet. I'd say 75 feet. Okay. Okay. Well, Mr. Whitaker is here to present the application. Is there anything anybody wants to discuss about it before we conclude the work session and move on to?
Just, is this a brand new application or a revised application?
Well, Mr. Whitaker, I had an opportunity to speak to him a week or 2 ago, and my understanding is that he's going to represent when he comes forward at the regular meeting that this is a new, even though it's a revised application, there hasn't been a new fee paid since this was last heard in April 2019. For all intents and purposes, it's a new application. It's been completely revised. It's being submitted, and Mr. Whitaker has advised me, and I'll have him put on the record that he has no problem with any new members or any members who may not have listened to the April 2019 session from hearing the application. Is that correct, Mr. Whitaker?
That is correct.
Okay. And we'll ask Mr. Whitaker to put that on the record publicly when.
I listened to the tapes if I need to.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. DeGennaro? You think is relevant?
Mark,
I think we're good.
curiosity question, and I guess it's because they're in the side yard. Spaces 27 to 37. I guess they're in the side yard, what's considered the side yard?
What numbers?
27 through 37. Oh, I'm sorry, 27 through 51.
Yeah, I would say that they're in the side
They're in
yard.
the side yard, okay.
Let me ask you a question, is the bulb not a front yard?
Is what?
Isn't the bulb a front yard?
The cul-de-sac?
Yeah. It has to
Yeah, but
actually,
it doesn't touch.
the radius of the bulb has to act as a front yard.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, can you
but it-
speak up?
I'm sorry. It said the radius of the bulb would have to act as a front yard.
But you're,
So where do you draw the line?
I would say you draw the line at the intersection with the bulb and the property line.
This way.
This way. So your front yard is here.
Side yard.
Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah, you have a property line here.
No, I see that.
It's just curious that the spaces, especially 37 through 51, are actually closer to the street probably than 80 through 83. But I get it.
Well, those are pre-existing spaces, right?
Well, nevertheless. We're looking at the whole site. So, okay. Okay.
Where do you want to bring up the brook?
So I'll bring it, yeah, sure. Bring it up now. There's a dilapidated bridge that I believe is wholly on the applicant's property. That is actually an impediment to the free-flowing brook. It's all collapsed. And I see no plan or no talk about what's going to be done with that bridge.
You know where that's located, Rudy?
Yeah, you can see it better on the map that's attached to the letter from the state, the last page. In the upper right-hand corner of the property, you can see where there's a bridge that goes across the brook there. It's delineated by 2 lines.
Is that near where the dumpster is now?
Yeah, yeah. It's not shown clearly on the larger site plan. Yeah.
Oh, it does show, it's not labeled as such, but it's shown
No,
on
but it's,
the tree and shrub planting detail too.
yeah. And I believe, I don't know, it's the owner's responsibility because it appears that his property is on the other side of the brook as well, so. They need to happen.
Is that a public walkway?
No, it's all collapsed.
Oh, so it's not even an existing bridge anymore?
Well, it is, but it's all sunken and collapsed. It's all there yet.
That bridge is actually obstructing the water, isn't it?
Correct, that's why I'm raising the issue.
Yeah.
So you can't cross it now, is what I'm saying.
No, you walk across it, sort of, kind
You
of.
couldn't cross it. I mean,
You can't drive across it.
no.
There used to be the main bridge to access to the quarry back. Came off Brookside Ave. But it hasn't been used in 60 years, and it's collapsed. And it's an impediment, probably getting worse, and it's an impediment to the free flow of the water.
And it connects to, does that connect to private property on the other
No,
side?
I think it's all encompassed by the applicant, the subject site.
Is that bridge denoted where it says L43? Is that what we're looking at? Looks like it's crossing, looking at the...
Well, it's just to the right of where it says L43. there.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you can see
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
delineated by those 2 lines.
Yes.
I guess it's actually probably a right of way over the brook for that. I don't know.
Well, we could certainly ask about it during the hearing. Oh, I see what you're saying. So it appears to be within the property line, huh?
Yeah. It appears to be.
Because it appears that the applicant's property line is across the brook.
Correct.
On the far side of the brook.
At that point, yeah. And I guess it should be removed, right? And I don't see any, it's not addressed here anyway.
You know anything about it, Mr. DeGenaro?
I know there's a bridge there. I don't know the condition of it. I haven't gone to see it.
Okay. Well, it's something we can certainly bring up during the,
So
During the
it
hearing.
was an old roadway that led into the old Rain property years ago. It's since settled to the point where it's probably an elevation drop of 4 feet.
Yeah. I would
And unfortunately, from the town's perspective, we've had to go back there numerous times, through numerous storms over the years to remove debris. Large, full-size trees get stuck there, and the problem becomes when that backs up, it floods out the Rose Garden Park and floods back all the way to Mawa and the White Cliff Avenue crossing. So, unfortunately, at this point, new ownership to the property, I think this is the time to have it pulled, have a guardrail installed, and then let the brook grow free from here on in.
Is that something that can be removed without approval of DEP?
I'm not gonna say that, but I think this is the time to address it. Because going forward, it's just gonna be a burden to the township. Every time it rains and then we have issues, we're gonna be back there as the town to try to keep it clear.
Yeah.
And it's really not our responsibility.
It's
It's purely on
branches and
private
whatever
property.
gets stuck, right?
Yeah.
How
Again,
deep is that brook? Do you know? Like, how far down does it go? Is it a couple of
5-6 feet at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that water flows into Allendale Brook.
Yeah.
You don't happen to have any photos?
Not with them, but I think
It might be worth noting that
it is denoted on
the township.
soil erosion and sediment control page.
Oh, it is,
Yeah, SCO1, it's denoted in the corner as 3.
okay. It might also be worth noting for the record that
I think it's that one.
You think it's the middle?
I do think.
I moved that one.
And it's stopped.
Yeah.
I think it's stopped.
Should we turn it off if it's not being used?
We can turn it off until
Why
we
don't you
need
turn
it.
it off and see what happens? Turn it, good idea.
That's a good way to turn it on.
That was a good way to get it off the microphone.
All right, we'll see if that helps.
That's why he
It
gets
might
paid
be
the
worth
big
noting
bucks.
that the township recently engaged in the township is responsible for stormwater management along that stretch of the Hocus Brook. Am I not correct, Scott?
Yeah.
And the township recently engaged in a property swap with the Brackett family to give us greater control of a little weir that is there that can be used to raise and lower the water level. So we are responsible for it, and this is a significant piece of stormwater management there. So.
Okay, certainly something we could bring up during the public hearing. Anybody else have any other comments? Anything they want to discuss before the actual public hearing on this?
Yeah, just about up to 8 o'clock, so.
Anybody else? No? Okay. So we'll hear the application. Obviously, any members are free to question the applicant and his experts on anything related to the property or even, nearby, so. Okay. It is approaching 8, so if there's no other business. Can I have a motion to adjourn the work session?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Mr. Seetsma and Scott? Mr. Fisher. Ms. Conlon?
Yes.
Mr. Iato?
Yes.
Mr. Homechak?
Yes.
Mr. Fisher?
Yes.
Mr. Seetsma?
Yes.
Mr. Boonstra?
Yes.
Mr. Alexandra?
Yes,
Mr. On?
yes.
Mayor Shanley?
Yes.
Chairman Fortunato?
Yes. Okay, I think we have a minute or so, and then we'll go into the regular meeting.
You're actually at 8 o'clock exactly on my iPhone. You want to start?
Okay. All right, if you have 8, we can get going.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
That was a good call on that microphone, so I'm making it work.
Are you able to pick, have you been able to pick everything up so far, Maureen?
The little bars are telling me that it is, but,
It's probably good that we have a reporter here taking it down, just in case. Okay. The September 9, 2020 public meeting of the Waco Planning Board is now in session. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, notice of this meeting appears on our annual schedule of meetings. The Copy of said annual schedule has been posted on the bulletin board in Memorial Town Hall. Copy has been filed at the Township Clerk, the Record, the Ridgewood News, and the North Jersey Herald and News, all newspapers with general circulation throughout the Township of Wykoff. At least 48 hours prior to this meeting, the agenda thereof was similarly posted, filed, and mailed to said newspapers. All applicants are hereby reminded that your application, if approved, may be subject to the terms, conditions, and payment of the Affordable Housing Development Fee requirements of the Township. Information can be obtained from the Code of the Township of Wykoff, Chapter 113-8 on the Township's website, www.wykoff-nj.com. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and decorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. Can we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Maureen, can we have a roll call, please?
Ms. Conlon. Here. Mr. Beato.
Here.
Mr. Homechek.
Here.
Mr. Fisher.
Here.
Mr. Sietzma.
Here.
Mr. Boonstra.
Here.
Mr. Alexandru.
Yes.
Mr. On.
Here.
Mayor Shanley.
Here.
Chairman Fortunato.
Here. Okay, at the work session, we approved the both the work session and regular business meeting minutes from the August 12th meeting. Is that correct, August 12th?
Yes.
Yes, August 12th. And we discussed the only application that's on this evening, which is the Galasso Enterprises LLC, which involves 825 Wyndham Court North. That is an amendment to an existing site plan wherein the applicant proposes to add 32 new parking spaces to the site, which currently has 38 parking spaces and 13 additional parking spaces to be achieved by restriping the existing parking lot for a total of 83. And there is a variance involved with regard to several of the spaces that are in the front yard under the statute. So, Mr. Whitaker, if you'd like to come forward on the application.
Usually loud enough.
Good evening, Mr. Whitaker. How you doing tonight?
There you go.
I guess if you get a lot of feedback on that, maybe we'll have to try to turn it off again, but we'll see if we can pick you up on the other mics.
Maybe move it back.
Closest mics.
Well, the board is, as far as, unless there's a lot
Oh,
of
here.
board
Okay.
hold up under
Okay.
his chair there.
Maureen, just let us know if you have difficulty picking up Mr. Whitaker or any of the witnesses.
I think we'll be fine, yeah, unless we get that feedback, so.
Okay. Good evening, Mr. Whitaker.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Very nice to see you. For the record, Bruce Whitaker from the firm of McDonald Whitaker, representing the applicant, Galasso Enterprises LLC. This is a request for an amendment to a previously approved site plan. This application was submitted over a year ago. We had a hearing back in January of 2019. At that point, we adjourned that hearing for purposes of making a submission to the DEP, which I will get to in a few minutes. On the basis of that, we came back with a new plan. It is still under the same application, but for the record and stipulating, this will be a new plan. So the information that we've supplied in the past is irrelevant at this point because it's a new plan. On that basis, I have notified all property owners within 200 feet. I republished and I've submitted a copy of my affidavit of service and proof of publication to the board secretary as well as to council. So this is a new beginning, if you will, as far as this amended site plan is concerned. The application is for 825 Wyndham Court North in Wykoff. It's shown on your tax map as block 203, lot 3.04. The property is in the L-2 zone. It permits office, industrial, and warehouse use. There's currently a 23,000 371 square foot, one-story masonry building that is used for office, industrial, and warehouse. It's an active building. This application is not requesting any change of use. There is no change of tenant. There is no modification to the building itself. The application, as stated earlier on the record by the chairman, is an application for an expansion of parking. The lot is 4 acres. It meets the minimum lot requirements. There are 3 non-conforming conditions on the property that are not being exacerbated by virtue of this application. That has to do with lot frontage, it has to do with the front yard setback, and it has to do with one of the side yard setbacks, all of which is shown on your plan. Again, there is no change to those 3 nonconformities, but beyond that, the applicant's property meets all of the bulk standards set forth in your code. There is a deficiency in parking currently. In going back and going through an OPA request, I can tell you that the record in town is deficient on how this got approved and how the parking got approved. And I do know that in looking at the site, much of the parking that's out there is not delineated and is a bit helter-skelter. But it was well beyond, or before I should say, my client took ownership of this property. There is a deficiency based upon the office use of 11,038 square feet and the industrial warehouse use of 13,933 square feet. A total of 58 spaces are required, and there exist right now 38 spaces. We are proposing 32 new parking spaces, and we're going to do a restriping, we're proposing, on the existing paving by adding another 13 spaces by the restriping. So we will have at this point 83 parking spaces. Important to note, there is not an ADA parking space on this entire site. By virtue of the applicant's proposal, there will be 4 ADA. They'll be in compliance with the ADA requirements, and one of them will be van accessible, which is also a requirement. The applicant is requesting variance relief for 4 of the parking spaces. I think if you look at the site, you look at the property, you look at the way this building is located, and you look at some of the unusual conditions that this property has, and you look at the anomaly of how this front yard is looked upon with the bulb of the cul-de-sac and where the building is located, we are making a very modest request for variance relief under NJSA 40:55-70C1 as well as C2. We think there's a benefit in allowing the parking to be there. The parking would not be an island or out by itself. It's merely going to be a continuation of the parking that is permitted along that side of the building. And I would suggest to you that the benefits outweigh the detriments in this instance in being able to create this kind of parking at that location. And I think for most coming down, no one would drive into that site and say, oh, look, there's 4 spaces in a front yard, because it really doesn't have the attribute of a front yard. And I think the C1 variance is appropriate in this instance based upon the unusual configuration of the lot itself. Look at how many sides it has, and the location of the lawfully existing structure. There's something very refreshing about this application. It's very rare that you have an application before you where someone's seeking to meet parking requirements. Generally, when you have a site plan, someone's asking for a variance to reduce the amount of parking that your code requires. But realistically, I submit to you that this application really shows good planning, and good planning for this purpose. All the uses that are in that building have been approved by the town. Zoning officer, construction code officials have allowed every tenant that's in that building right now. There's a certain amount of industrial and there's a certain amount of office. But you know that your code is such that you need 1 space for every 250 square feet of office space and 1 space for every 1,000 square feet of warehouse. So if the applicant were to come in with a prospective tenant and there was going to be a change in that amount of parking, the parking's not there. So we have an applicant that's being very, very proactive as it pertains to parking in 3 instances.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but when did he buy the building?
2018.
Okay, all right. Very good. So he adopted this issue.
Absolutely. I can give you a little quick history of the building.
I'm hearing it for the first time.
Okay, quick history. There was a two gentlemen, they were partners. They had a manufacturing and warehouse business. I don't recall their name now, they built the building. They used the building for years. They then took part of the building and leased it to someone else. They continued the business until the two of them retired and gave up the business. So they developed that building for their own use. And I'm thinking maybe when they developed it, they came before a planning board back in the 70s or late 60s and said, this is the amount of parking we need for our business. But that's not what we have today. Okay? Back to where I was. The concept of what this applicant is doing is being very proactive with the parking so that if there is a change in the mix, where an office use wants to take up more space where there's warehouse now, the parking's going to be there for it. That's the idea. And that's where the 83 spaces comes about. And that's the right way to do it, rather than each time a tenant would come, if the zoning officer in town says you don't have parking for that tenant, he wants to have an extra 1,000 square feet of office, and you don't have those extra 4 spaces you need, we'd be running to the Board of Adjustment each time a tenant comes. And knowing very well how long it takes to get in front of a Board of Adjustment and have a hearing, especially in this day and age, many tenants say, I'm leaving and I'm going to rent, they go somewhere else. So I have a new owner who's looking to upgrade the facility, and you'll see that as I go through the other upgrades we're proposing, and being very proactive by saying, let me have the parking design to make this building viable going forward. With that said, there are a number of other items, planning-wise, that serve as positive elements in what we are seeking. Recognizing again that we are meeting your requirements under your site plan ordinance. And municipal land use law says, well, we can meet the requirements under the site plan ordinance, you shall grant approval. The only thing we don't meet is asking for those extra 4 parking spaces that requires the variance in the front yard. So we're going to be eliminating the parking nonconformity that exists and makes it conforming. Obviously, from a planning perspective, a big positive. We're creating ADA parking where none exists, and now it's going to be conforming. We're going to provide a pedestrian access that was never there before, something that's very important in a multi-tenant building. We are providing drainage improvements that were not there now, and you'll hear about that. We are going to provide something that your ordinance has created and is a requirement now, but wasn't when these two gentlemen built the building, and that is an enclosure around a dumpster. And a dumpster in a location that's viable for where the tenants are, and not out in the middle of a parking lot exposed. And we're going to provide lighting improvements that, as per Mr. DeGennaro's most recent report, confirms that they are code compliant. Again, what I've stated to you, and it's very important to understand, that there is no change in use. All the tenants that are there have already been approved by the township. Our request, besides variance relief, is for certain waivers. You will hear that we have done the work that we needed to do with the NJDEP. On the basis of the work that we've done and the delineations that have occurred, we are seeking a waiver from an EIS. And the second waiver that we are requesting is a waiver as it pertains to a traffic study. We are not trying to create anything that's not already there. We have the building. We have the ability to occupy it. What we're really now trying to do is bring that parking up to what's necessary for the building to function properly. With that said, as the overview of the application, since I was here in 2019 on this application, we've gone back and we have engaged a professional for purposes of doing the environmental study. The applications were submitted to the NJDEP. For purposes of just marking things tonight, you have the NJDEP letter of January 30th, 2020, excuse me, January 30th. I apologize, I'm fogging up here with this mask. And that is your LOI. It was submitted with the application, but I do want to mark it as A1, and I have extra copies if you don't have it with you this evening. The second document, let me pass these around, we can't do it that way. The second document that I will mark is, because this was raised as a question back in 2019, flood hazard area and the applicable determination pertaining to flood hazard area. And I have a letter of November 4th, 2019, that is self-explanatory as to what can and cannot be done there. And let the record reflect and have an understanding that the decisions made by the NJDEP, they have the exclusive jurisdiction as to what we can and cannot do there. And on the basis of that, we will conform to those requirements. That's the overview. Unless there's any preliminary questions of me, I'm going to call our first witness. I'm going to call Richard Wasbrock, our engineer, to give an overview of existing conditions and what is proposed. I will then call our environmentalist to explain how the study was done, not for purposes of decision-making as to whether it was done correctly or not, but obviously to show what we had to do to get the DEP approvals. And Mr. Galasso is here in the audience if you have any questions about the functionality of the building itself. Through the course of Mr. Wasbrock's testimony, we will address the bridge issue. Give a little bit of it away. The bridge goes past our property, so that's where our problem is. But he'll testify. It goes past our property. I'll have Mr. Westbrook testify to that.
Mr. Whitaker, before you get started with your first witness, could you just clarify a couple of things for me? So this building is partially warehouse and partially office, correct?
That's correct.
And
The amounts of it are delineated on the plan.
okay, what's the parking requirement for warehouse space?
1 per 1,000 square feet.
And for office space?
1 per 250 square feet.
All right. Is that correct, Mr. DeGennaro? Your understanding?
Yes.
Okay.
And you have that, Mr. Chairman, in the box up on the left-hand side, I think, of the front page.
Okay. And which of your witnesses is going to testify as to the amount of warehouse space as opposed to office space in the building?
Well, Mr. Westbrook has those calculations. That's how he did the plan, so he can testify to it. I can have Mr. Galasso confirm it.
Okay,
But so that you know, that warehouse and office space has all been confirmed by the township in granting the COs for all the tenants that exist there now.
is it your position that the entire building could be converted to office space if the parking was adequate?
I didn't do that math. But I
Well,
don't think, I don't think without a variance.
Well, the key point is
Yeah.
is parking.
Yeah,
In other words, this use allows for this entire building, assuming there was enough parking, to be used as office use?
that's that's what the zone permits, yes.
That's
The
correct,
L2
Mr. DeGennaro?
L2 permits.
I'm sorry, what's your question?
My question is, if parking allowed, could this building be converted entirely to office space from warehouse?
As long as it's permitted in the L2.
Yeah, it's a permitted use, correct? Office?
Yes.
Okay,
Office, manufacturing, and warehouse is permitted.
okay. So the office use requires, any office use requires an intensity of 4 times parking as a warehouse use?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Just a question, the November 4th, 2019 letter, is that A2?
Yes.
Okay.
You can proceed, Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you. Call Mr. Westbrook. He can be sworn in. Mr. Hanley?
Yes. Raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
Can you state your name and your business affiliation and business address?
Richard Wasbrock and Associates, 44 Garrett Place, Midland Park, New Jersey.
Mr. Westbrook, you've been previously qualified before this board as an expert in the field of civil engineering, but this is basically a new type of application with new members, so I'm going to take you through a voir dire very quickly, okay? I'd like you to give to the board the benefit of your educational background and your professional background, and explain your involvement with planning boards and zoning boards, both as an applicant's engineer as well as a board engineer.
Well, my education starts with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering, Syracuse University, 1992. Licensed professional in New Jersey, 1998. Followed by licenses in other states, New York, Pennsylvania, Connecticut. In New Jersey, my experience has been as a civil engineer, designing sites, both in building layout, parking lot layout, grading, drainage, environmental aspects of flood hazard and wetlands issues. As a planning board, zoning board, I have served multiple boards in the role of board engineer, serving on Mr. DeGennaro's position, so I'm familiar with the process. Worked as municipal engineer in some towns, and have been doing that since I was, since I started engineering in 1992.
And what representative towns have you represented?
Midland Park, City of Orange, Maywood, Totowa, Haledon, come to mind.
And you've been qualified as an expert witness in the field of civil engineering before boards, not only as a municipal or board engineer, but also on behalf of applicants. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Your license in New Jersey is in good standing today.
Yes, it is.
I would ask that Mr. Wasbach be qualified as an expert witness in the field of civil engineering so that he can render an opinion in that field.
Mr. Westbrook is so qualified and will be recognized as such.
Thank you. Mr. Westbrook, you were engaged by the applicant, am I correct, in connection with preparing the site plan that has been made, been submitted, I should say, with the application itself?
Yes, I have.
And in connection with that application, you prepared the plan, you were at the site, and you developed what's in front of you this evening that will mark as Exhibit A3.
Yes.
And that is an exhibit that has a final revision date in March the 16th, I recall.
March 16, 2020.
Now, referencing that exhibit as A3 now, referencing it by the pages, I'd like you to take the board through what the existing conditions are.
Existing conditions of the site is a mixed-use industrial office facility. It's located at the north end of town located on a cul-de-sac as well, off of Wyndham Court North, the end of the cul-de-sac. North of the property is Township of Mulwa. East, south, and west is Township of Wyckoff. The site is a 4-acre site, 4-acre being required. It's a odd-shaped lot. As Mr. Whitaker indicated, as far as reviewing the Oprah and the history of the site, you can see in the township records also the creation of this lot, kind of carved it out as 4 acres for the lot to the east. Between the sizing of the lot and the shape of the stream, shape of the property line, it gets that odd shape. Makes it unique with the bulb of the cul-de-sac, the front yard, side yard, multiple side yards, rear yards, several different bearings there.
Now, you prepared the zoning chart that's part of this site plan, is that correct?
Correct.
Am I correct in saying that there are 3 nonconformities that exist
Yes.
as it pertains to frontage, lot width, and the 1 side yard?
Yes.
And those are nonconformities based upon variance relief granted historically when this plan was originally submitted and this building was built.
Yes, it has existed since the site was created.
And by virtue of what we're proposing now, am I correct in saying that there is no change to any of the bulk requirements that in connection with our proposal?
Yes, those requirements that are in existing variance conditions are pertaining to the building. We're not proposing any changes to the building, no additions, no story additions.
So they remain the same and they're not being exacerbated?
Correct.
All right, with that said, while we're talking about existing conditions, let's revisit the plan and go to the soil movement plan so that we can look at the bridge aspect and put that on the record now. SC.01. I believe it's the 5th page of the plan. You have that before you?
I do.
Can you point out where the bridge is that's on this property?
In the upper right corner of the view space, which is also the upper right corner, northeast corner of the property, You can see where the existing parking lot transitions into a driveway crossing the bridge, crossing the stream into Mohawk. You can also see the heavy, darker line running east-west, crossing through the bridge. That's the darker line is the property line, and the line, there's two lines more or less paralleling it on either side, north and south, being the stream. So the property line meanders with the stream, and in the area of the bridge is both on my client's property and the neighbor to the north.
So, for purposes of attempting to remove a bridge, we would be having to infringe onto someone else's property, is that correct?
Yes.
How many feet is it on the other guy's property?
I don't have an exact dimension, actually, the U4 did scale off. If it's the middle of that bridge, I'm going from recollection, having walked it, it's maybe a 20-foot wide bridge, so half of it, 10 on each property.
What would it take to remove the bridge completely?
I didn't study the bridge. I know I walked across it, it's low-lying. You walk down to it, it's low-lying, down by the water. It crosses into Mawa, and then in Mawa, it's a commercial development. It's the back of the development, there's guardrail through there.
But when were you there, do you think it's a problem having that bridge collapse the way it is? Or do you think it's fine the way it is?
It was a heavy concrete bridge. Like I said, I didn't go underneath it to see if it was collapsing in terms of structure or anything. I was just getting my bearings of the site. It really wasn't.
Well, it's clearly settled though, right?
I don't know, because I don't know
You don't know?
I don't know if it was settled, because the driveway, you go from this property, you drive down, it's naturally grading, it's going down to the bridge. I can't tell you, I didn't look under the bridge to see if it was collapsed or what.
So the
Well,
issue,
if you're trying to walk across the bridge, you'd have to literally jump to the next property, wouldn't you?
No, I walked across the bridge.
You can walk straight across without?
I walked straight
Okay.
across, it's concrete, you know, I didn't take a vehicle or anything, but you can walk
Yeah.
across, and then you go up an embankment to what's been changed in development in the Mallwall property, because you end up at the back of the industrial building that's in Mallwall.
So you're not sure if we had removed that bridge, if it would be a positive or a negative for the town?
I don't know
That's
the
what you're
impact.
telling. Okay, all right.
but the reason I'm putting that on the record is just from a legal perspective, we would not have the ability to remove a bridge.
Well, we
that
have
has-
an
that
obstruction
has
and that's.
access
I'm
on
asking
another.
your
on another-
expert's opinion about if it
Yeah,
would be a
but on
positive or
another
a
property, we would not have the legal
I'm
right.
sure it could be done with
Well,
some kind of arrangement.
I think that
Half
it,
of it's on your client's property?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Half of it is on your client's property?
Right.
Approximately.
But I don't know what rights exist with property owners with a bridge that's between the two, that you couldn't just go out there and unilaterally say, I'm taking half of it away without hearing from the property owner
No,
next
clearly,
door.
clearly.
Okay, that's what
I
I'm
mean, I
saying.
think you're not
Yes.
making a big jump on that.
No.
Yeah, I'm sure you would have to talk to the other property owner, especially if you wanted to tear, if you want the other property owner to pay for it.
Yeah, and I've done a search, I did not find any maintenance agreements that pertains to the bridge when I did my search, my background. Okay, Mr. Westbrook, in moving on,
Does your client pay taxes in Mobile or is only in Whitehall?
the Whitehall.
does anybody know, or is anybody aware, Scott, are you aware, does anybody regularly use that bridge?
No, it's completely blocked. You can't get over.
There's guide rail, the Mallwall property, there's the driveway around the industrial building is there. There's guide rail along the edge of their driveway.
There's a guardrail, so you have to hop the guardrail, if you were to walk over the bridge, you'd have to hop the guardrail to get onto the Mawa property?
You probably have to get off the bridge, go another 20 feet or so, and then there's the guardrail and the driveway.
So you were there yourself.
Yes.
And you're gonna tell me that the driveway and the bridge is the same elevation? It's not low?
I'll tell you, the driveway
I didn't say
of
that.
our property is pitching downward, so it's going down toward that
So what's
bridge.
the elevation change, do you remember?
It was a
Double feet?
no, it was a gentle walk. I was walking it, I walked across the bridge, and then I walked up in grade to the neighboring property. I really was just getting my bearings on the site, so I didn't study the bridge to see what conditions it's in.
But there is a drop, that's what I was asking you, you just didn't have to jump, that was your answer. There is a drop, right?
It was just, it was a
Okay.
slope.
Yeah.
So
You walk me down the.
Okay.
So
It's been a
for
while since
informational
I've seen it.
purposes for the applicant, actually, I can tell you that that bridge impedes the, when that blocks, it's impeding the flow of water, and it floods, which could be a detriment to the new property owner. So I would think that from an engineering perspective, you want to look at that and maybe address it, regardless if it's half yours or not half yours. Because I believe as an employee 33 years in this town, that that is a detriment, and I think this is the time to address it, and I'll just leave it at that.
Well, yeah, let Mr. Westbrook continue his,
I just-
and we'll
I
save
wanna
the
get it
questions
on
for the
record.
end.
I want to
Okay.
get it on the record, Mr. Chairman, that I believe this is the time to address the issue.
It certainly would have been helpful if we had some photos or something of it, so everybody could understand, because I wasn't even aware there was a bridge there when I drove the property this morning, and I didn't notice that at all, and frankly, I didn't notice it really on the plan either, so, but,
And the reason we're not addressing it is, frankly, I just heard about it this evening myself, okay? I can say I've been to the site, but I didn't take the steps of walking across the bridge. So I did not know about it, or otherwise I think I would have been prepared and have done some more due diligence on it before I got here tonight. But it's something we can obviously look into.
okay.
The first step would obviously be to put the other property owner on notice of what they think about the bridge.
Did you have to, as part of your application, you had to serve notice on that property?
Oh, yeah.
You did, okay.
We have a lot of notices to do. Over 100. Okay.
All right, proceed, Mr. Whitaker.
Okay, Mr. Westbrook, I'd like you to now, looking at A3, I'd like to go through what is being proposed. And we're going to start out with the first subject, the most important, and the real reason we are here is the parking aspect. We talked about the amount of parking spaces that are there now. I'd like you to show where they are and then show what is being proposed as far as increasing it to the 83.
The existing site, building is more or less centered in the site as a whole. There is existing parking on the west side of the building. There's a drive aisle with access to loading docks and some additional pavement area on the north side of the property. On the east, I would say is the majority of the existing parking. The parking feels odd shaped in a more or less triangle, with parking on the north side and on the southeast side. South of the building, there's a circulation driveway that connects the rear or westward parking with the front of the building and the cul-de-sac. So you can do a full loop around the building today.
And by virtue of what we're proposing, the full loop would still remain, correct?
That's correct. What we're proposing, candidly, looking at the Oprah in 1980s, there was a plan, I don't know if it was approved, conceptual or not, because the record's not clear. There was a plan that showed parking along that access drive. So we followed suit, said the natural place to add parking here is along that access drive. To that, we are using the access drive. We are reshaping it because it's, plus or minus a foot through the years, 24 here, 25 there. Shape it parallel in standard perpendicular parking coming off of that access aisle, facing into the building. That gives you good access to what exists. There are two main access points on the south side of the building that lead to the south side of the building. If you look internally, is more the office space, and the north side of the building is more the warehouse space. So it gives you direct access to that portion of the building. We are also proposing one space in the southwest corner, as well as the dumpster enclosure, and the existing parking fields that I spoke of before. We're looking to optimize, restripe them, and maximize the parking spaces. So by restriping, we gain 13 spaces. We add 32 for a net of 83.
So you're talking about the restriping of 13, that is on existing pavement,
Correct.
and the pavement of some fashion that's obviously going to be improved.
Yes.
In connection with the parking that we're proposing, I'm correct to say that 58 is required now, is that correct?
Yes.
And that's based upon what we've been given permission for as far as warehouse space and office space, and I say we, the applicant's been given that permission from the Township of Whiteclaw for the existing tenants, correct?
Yes.
Show me now where the balance of the the new parking is proposed for the 83.
The new parking is the shaded in gray along the south side of the building, between the building and the existing access driveway.
And the aisle itself still going to be proper width and conforming to code.
Correct.
And the parking spaces that are there, all but 4 of them are conforming as far as location.
Yes, all the proposed spaces, except to the 4 furthest to the east.
So 81, 80, 81, 82, 83, those are in a front yard?
Correct.
Just point them out for everyone's identification.
80, 81, 82, 83. It's the 4 easterly most of the new proposed spaces.
So those are the last 4 in the whole strip that's being proposed.
Correct.
When I come in from the cul-de-sac, does the front of this building and where this parking is proposed, does it give it the aura or the look of being the front yard?
Now, it doesn't, in my opinion, when you pull into the site, you almost want to continue north on the cul-de-sac into that main parking field on the east side of the property. The front of the building, there's vegetation in there, you don't see the building heavily, so it doesn't feel like a front yard.
Excuse me, Mr. Westbrook, Maureen just brought to my attention that there's some difficulty hearing you on the YouTube feed that's going out to the public. So could you, I don't know if there's gonna be a feedback issue, but if you could get closer to the microphone and
Yeah, you
speak.
could move the easel up closer.
Yeah,
The people that are
I'm not the
watching-
engineer, but I figured that out.
Yeah.
I was gonna look see if there's cord.
Somebody texted me and said they're watching the YouTube feed and they can't hear you too well.
And if you could speak up louder too. We can hear you okay, but there may be some problems with,
I will also try to point this mic in my general direction. Hopefully it'll pick me up better where it was facing the other way.
that may help.
Yeah.
I won't be able to flip pages.
That's interesting, you probably take the mask off.
Mr. Whitaker, I meant to bring this up before. Do you have another copy of the plan that we could fit? The YouTube feed's coming from that side, so they're looking at the back of you now. I know this is difficult circumstances because of the way things are. I was wondering if there is an extra copy of the plan, maybe we could face it. I don't want to take your copy, but is there anything that we may be able to prop and be able to show from the other
You'll
side?
find one, you can carry on.
Okay, all right, then Maureen will try to find one, and we could at least prop it on a chair or something, so.
Maureen, do you have a spare board that we can put on this easel?
Yeah,
I'll see. I'll see what I can scrounge.
Maureen, there's another copy of the plan. Do we have a board
Oh,
perhaps?
Christine heard us.
Yeah, she's got one.
I was coming to you.
Need something to make it firm so it's.
Yeah, I think I have a big piece of cardboard in my office.
We could bring that easel behind you, Mr. Whitaker, and
Yeah, just bring that behind.
I'll grab
actually,
some
think,
clips and some cardboard. There you go. I'll be back.
Where is the
Oh, I'm
YouTube
in
feed?
my office.
It's the camera right above, so you gotta.
Camera faces this way.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
got, no, that's gotta be
It's
up
gotta
there.
be up there.
Yeah, the
that's
camera's
too
actually
far.
looking this
Yeah.
way.
If you put it back there, the camera's not gonna see it.
Is that it there?
That's it right there.
Yeah, that's it.
yeah, I thought it was farther back.
No, it's not
It's a
that far.
perfect view of Mr. Whitaker's back.
Yes.
Apologize. Better than the front.
Let's just give Maureen a moment to see if she can locate that.
Mark's out there.
Or even if we have,
Excuse me, the restrooms are. Just one real quick.
Just give us a moment, I think they're coming up with something.
That's not too big, Mark?
You got clips?
I have clips. Clips.
I'm not so sure.
I would bet against it. Yeah,
I think we should have the stuff scanned.
I
And
can't
put
see
a
it.
Zoom feed up on, you know, the thing on the picture. That way public can see it. So you can share your screen.
Somebody's gonna have to monitor that.
Yeah,
And, you know,
Thanks, Maureen.
show the
Thanks, Mark.
PDF.
all the points can be shown on a shared screen on Zoom for the YouTube. We'll get better.
And Mr. Whitaker, would you mind just bringing Mr. Westbrook briefly through just the darkened areas again? Because at least they, if anybody on the, apparently we do have some people watching on YouTube, and these will clarify to them.
Mr. Wasbrook, if you could just show what is the new area proposed for parking spaces?
On the one that they can see on the camera.
Thank you. On sheet SB01, the heavier, darker shaded area is the proposed new parking spaces located between the building, south side of the building, and the existing access driveway. That's shown in the shaded area here at the westerly side of the building to the easterly side. We have pointed out that 4 spaces, 80, 81, 82, 83, are located within the front yard required setback for the property. Those are the 4 spaces we're asking for variance. Showing the uniqueness of the bulb, if this were a standard road with a standard 50-foot width, we probably wouldn't even, no, we would not be within 75 feet of it because of the bulb shape of the cul-de-sac that pushes the front yard setback out further into our property. We're also showing 1 space on the southwest corner, stall number 52. It's also shaded in a gray next to the proposed refuse area.
Now, all the parking spaces themselves are conforming as far as size is concerned, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you've stated that all the aisle widths, et cetera, meet the code compliant.
Correct.
You did allude to the dumpster area. Would you point out where the dumpster currently is located on the site?
Dumpster is currently located in the northeast corner of the existing parking field.
Is that just a dumpster that is exposed,
Yeah, it's just a
sitting in the
pickup
parking lot?
dumpster sitting in the parking lot.
No enclosure, no fencing, no gate.
Correct.
What is being proposed?
1 with an enclosure, 10 by 16 refuse enclosure area, typical concrete pad, fence enclosure with gate. This allows for direct access for the refuse truck, come down the access aisle, lift the container, and move on around the circulation of the building. That's why we chose that location.
Anything proposed landscaping-wise around that enclosure?
Yes.
Can you point out what that is and where?
Flip the page, L. On sheet L2, you can see that we're proposing 6 arborvitaes in that area, which will be screening trees around the dumpster. While we're here, you can also see a number of other screening trees that are being proposed, both along the southern side of the existing drive aisle, basically infilling through an area of trees that, through the life of those trees, you can see that some have, aged and been removed, some have fallen, some have died. So we're infilling in the gaps, trying to create that buffer between our neighbors to the south and our developed area. We are proposing On the western side, similarly, it's infill, the existing trees, the trees that exist today are all mature with little screening ability in the lower branches, so we're infilling with arborvitae, trying to create that road tiered effect, the staggered trees to create the visual screening. And we supplement that even further around the area that's actively used with trailers in the northwest corner. In addition, we are proposing the parking lot trees of the maples.
While on that
Yes, sir.
subject, before you move on, how big are those trees going in? Am I I see 6 feet, 5 feet, is that how big they are when they go in?
Yes.
Okay, how big should they get?
Ours will grow as much as you let them. They'll grow to the space they have.
Well, right, the
Yeah.
reason I ask is I would imagine if you're going, I guess this is north, southbound, there's gonna be lots of residential area there, right? Looking down towards the building, I would imagine that's going to be a very important part of the
What-
application.
Right, if you were up on,
Is that not correct on the south side?
yeah, if you were on the road south of this,
Yeah.
sitting up on the road, the existing tree canopy, the upper part of the canopy screens the building. But if you were in somebody's backyard, the trees that we're proposing, the lower trees, are going to provide some screening. So we're keeping the existing, we're not looking to cut
Of
down the
course,
existing trees.
right.
And we're infilling where the screening ability, there are majority of white pines and spruces in there, that through their time, they've branched up.
10
they're-
feet, 14 feet, what are you thinking?
Arborvitaes will certainly grow that tall.
Yeah.
These
I
green
trim mine at
giants,
home, so I don't,
Are they green giant or emerald green?
these are green giant.
They grow fast.
Yes.
You'll
Yeah.
get it to 25, 30 feet.
Yes.
You want to see a
Yeah.
good example, go look at Stonehouse Nursery on Woodbury.
Yes.
Those trees were planted, they were probably 5 to 7 foot tall trees.
Mr. Westbrook, question for you. The drive aisle on the south that's coming off the cul-de-sac now, that's one-way existing off the cul-de-sac now?
Well, that's a good point, and maybe you don't intend to. But right now, there's no designation. So we are proposing to improve the circulation with traffic arrows and some stop signs and stop bars.
Well, as it exists now, it's substantially thinner than you're proposing, correct? So you probably wouldn't be able to get 2 cars
Now, you
now?
can get 2 cars now.
You can.
It meanders by 6 inches to a foot, through the life of it being paved and repaved. So we're truing up the edges and creating the double width, but for the most part, that exists today. The curb cut on the cul-de-sac exists today. We're not looking to change that.
So the drive aisle to the south wouldn't change, the width of it, based on your proposal?
Just truing up the edge,
Okay. So it'd be essentially the same?
correct.
Okay.
And then we're proposing, you can see stop bars and center line at the cul-de-sac to provide some control, some stop signs there as well, and traffic markings of arrows around the site, and some signage, because the north side is not wide enough for two-way traffic, so we're proposing a west to east, one-way direction,
Is that from right to left?
left to right.
Left to right?
How do they turn around?
Well,
I mean, there's 2 ways on the left side, there's only 1 way in the back, right?
Yeah, they're gonna go around,
you're gonna go around,
You just gotta keep going.
around the
Yes.
building.
Right.
Mr. Westbrook,
so you're
I
a
see.
small vehicle, you can go
Yeah.
out in either direction. If you're larger and you can't turn around,
Okay.
you have full circulation. The loading
So-
docks are in the back there.
Right, so basically on the left side of this building, the only way you're really going eastbound is if you're pulling out of this driveway, out of the parking spaces numbered 3 to 11, is that right? Because there's nobody coming in the opposite direction, this is a one-way in the back.
Correct.
Right.
But if you're in stalls 3 to 11, you can go out the north side or the south side.
The north side or the south side?
You can,
How do you go out north?
sorry, I'll point to yours for a
You
minute.
just go that, okay.
Let me point to here for everybody else to see, if you don't mind. If you're in stall
Make a case here.
11, you can back out of your stall, head north and make a right, going east along the north side of the building and out to the cul-de-sac. Or you can do the opposite, you go down the page, and go along the south side of the building.
Okay. Proceed.
Can we, Can we talk about stalls 12 through 15? I'm a little confused here. Maybe you can help. There's a line at the back of those stalls which seems to be a delineation of the depth of those stalls. It's where it's marked previously undesignated parking. There's a solid line across the back of those 4 stalls. Now, but yet, and then behind that line is labeled gravel area. But yet, on a landscape plan, you boxed in evidently that entire area. And you just referred to something there as trailer parking. I'm a little confused, and also on your landscape plan, the double row of arborvitae comes along the property line and stops when evidently it gets near that gravel area, and there's a single row of arborvitae around that quote-unquote gravel area. What's going on there?
What's going on there is Mr. Romano, in his ownership of the property, as a tenant of the property, he's using that space today. And he has vehicles that are, he can describe it better, but from what I see, pickup trucks pulling a box trailer. And so in that space, in those spaces, you've got in the numbered areas, the pickup truck, and in the gravel area, the box trailer. So it's a combination trailer, pickup truck.
So actually, those parking spaces do not end at that little delineation line. They go all the way back to the depth of the gravel area. Am I correct there?
Yes, because that line that you're speaking of is the edge of
Maybe
pavement.
a little misleading.
So the line is the edge of pavement, Rudy.
It's the edge of the pavement.
Right.
Okay.
So what's the gravel area for?
That's where the trailers are.
So it is parking.
It's part of that stall. It's an oversized stall for trailer and the pickup truck that pulls it.
So it's just, is there anywhere else on this site you can relocate those 4 spaces?
That's in my mind, the best location, because I have to let the applicant speak a little
Actually, it's
better
not,
through,
because
but
that's on the whole level site here. That's the area that's closest to a neighbor residential area. The other residences are high on Brookside Ave, they're above the site.
what else?
But that area, it's interesting that stalls 1 through 11, there's a considerable setback from your property line. But on those 4 stalls, you get pretty close to the property line. And that's the commercial, if you will, vehicles that are being parked, not just automobiles like would be in stalls 1 through 11.
Right, but
So,
you-
that's my question, is there anywhere else to relocate that on the property? Big
Well,
site.
President, the reason I started to say that's the most suitable location is because of its length. Because these vehicles are active, and I won't speak to their operation, but they're not used here on the site. They go off-site, and to put the trailer in one space and the pickup truck in the other, while you could do that, you're hitching, unhitching, backing up, doing more maneuvers, where these elongated spaces allow for the the unhitched parking of trailer and tow vehicle, so that in the morning, whenever their operation is, they can get in the vehicle and move out to their job, versus having to take the time to hitch and unhitch operationally. So from an operational perspective, in seeing the vehicles that are being used there, that's why I say it's the most suitable location.
And from the location, Mr. Westbrook, that you've got there, it doesn't prompt any type of variance relief, is that correct?
Correct.
Is that what's happening on the other side of the property as well, where it says gravel area? It's where the old dumpster is, where the existing dumpster is now.
That's in the area where that bridge is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't recall seeing any active use down there.
No active use?
Not in my visits to the site.
And so there's no commercial parking there, is what you're saying? There's not gonna be any commercial parking in this gravel
Well,
area?
there may be some, no. There'll be,
There is or there isn't?
there is, yeah. We're
There
gonna have
is.
Mr. Galasso testify to that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Bear in mind, my visits are
One more at a
snapshots.
time.
Understood. So you got commercial on the left and on the right. I got it.
Right.
Okay.
If you're gonna park those trailers there, I me rephrase the question. You've got a double row of arborvitae in the area where there's a significant setback from the parking spaces, namely spaces 1 through 11. But yet, when we get to spaces 12 to 15, there's only a single row of arborvitae. Why isn't it doubled up there as well?
Well, we proposed a single row because that's the space that was available to create a double row there. We would be cutting down existing trees to create space to put the double row. Behind or to the left of that gravel area, there's a slight rise, so you've got a berming effect, and you've got natural existing trees in there. So we're infilling to supplement what's there.
I can see where you've got a gap there because there's trees there, but what about the area towards, say, towards the south and the west, where it's only a single row? And actually, the single row on the north side is almost inconsequential because it's the brook and the mobile industrial sites on the other side. That's the facing there. I'm concerned about the residents on the other side of the property line where you're getting pretty close there.
Yeah,
Couldn't you, well, what about the area along the brook where you have previously undesignated parking, 16, 17, 18, 19, and 20? Couldn't they be parallel park here, those ones and others? Then there is no exposure. It's the brook in the back of those industrial buildings in Walworth. I think you need to find another place to park those trails, guys.
But I think the screening that is.
Is there any standard for elongated parking stalls, or are they just considered regular parking, standard size?
I don't know of any standard in the code other than what we got.
And I think the landscaping that we are proposing is infilling it, and, while on paper, they're shown as a row or a stagger, when they're installed, to place them visually.
Yeah, when trailers that go in and out, it's a commercial, it's not automobiles like in stalls 1 through 11. They're noisy. They're noisy, cars aren't noisy.
Yep.
So,
Location of them fits within the parameters of your zoning code, just so that.
I
have that
understand,
on the
I'm
record.
talking
Yep,
about
yep.
neighbor to neighbor, that's all.
I understand, no, I understand.
I know you're always good on the technical end of it, but I'm just looking at it neighbor to neighbor, and the fact that.
Let us revisit it to see if there's an ability to add some to it, do it that way.
What about taller arborvitaes?
We could certainly be taller, but the point I was gonna make is, in conversation with the neighbors, the plantings that are there are from those discussions. We didn't do this just in a vacuum for what we thought was good. We spoke to the neighbors, and we looked at, we stood on the bridge in that northwest corner and looked up to that trail or that gravel area and said, okay, what can we do to mask, to screen the top of the trailer? You're not seeing the whole trailer, you're seeing the top of it. Because that bridge is several feet lower in elevation, so you're looking up the hill, through the trees, to that space. You've got the berm, and then it drops down into the gravel area, so you're looking up and over. So to add this additional screening, I think will be effective.
What berm? What berm is that?
From the gravel area, it's hard to see on the plan, and I say berm, it's probably a foot or two of rise up into that
I'm sorry,
existing,
I don't know where the berm is located. Where is it on my map?
west of the gravel area, north and west of the gravel area.
Gravel area, okay.
That berm is pretty well degraded, isn't it?
Excuse me?
Is that berm somewhat, it's pretty well degraded from when it was originally put in, am I not correct on that? I mean, I've been in there too.
I don't know what it looked like when it was first put in.
Well,
I mean,
all right.
I know there's a
It's
step
fairly
up
well
there today.
degraded. It's almost level, it's really hardly a berm anymore.
I think there's a good grade change between the gravel area and you step up to the trees.
What's the purpose of the berm?
The berm was there when they built
It
it.
was
Why?
it was the original screening plan for this building,
Right.
50 years ago, whatever it was.
Okay.
Hey, Mark, can I ask you a question? If you have an area that's undelineated as for parking, and someone parks in that area, what's the remedy? What's the practical effect of that? So for instance, if you have a gravel area on the other side, for instance, and there's parking that's going on in there, but it's not marked for parking, what's the practical remedy for that? Is there any?
I don't think there is. I mean, I think the purpose of showing the parking spaces is to show that you could accommodate vehicles. And if you have a gravel area that's not delineated, but it's not being utilized, you know, it's not lawn, you know, you can't park your car in the front lawn. There's an ordinance against that.
Well, my question is, for instance, they're asking for 83 parking spaces here, but practically speaking, if there are areas that are not being used and can't qualify for parking purposes because of, you know, legally there's not enough area to back out, but they're parking there. So in effect, they're using more than 83 parking spaces. If this were granted, what's the practical, is there a remedy for that? In other words, exceeding the amount of parking that's allowed.
Any code in the town, any code in the town gives you a minimum amount that you need. You're always permitted to construct more.
No, that's not my question.
Oh,
My question is,
understood.
if there's an undeveloped area of the property that someone could squeeze vehicles in that are not legal parking spaces. So, for instance, if this was approved and there were 83 parking spaces, but in addition to the 83, the owner or a tenant were to use this northeast gravel area to park another 5 or 6 vehicles that are not marked, what's the practical problem with that?
I don't know that there's anything that, because it's an industrial track and it's a gravel area, if there's vehicles being parked that are longer than others extending into that area, I don't know that's.
Would that be considered stacked parking, which we don't permit?
It's not stacked when you have a trailer attached to a truck now.
Well, the trailer doesn't drive itself.
So they double back though.
I mean, my only concern is
I mean, you're not using the stacked parking definition to count as a parking space for the use of the building. In other words, a stacked parking space isn't added to the parking count, 84, 85, 86. They're not using that as a quantifiable number of spaces. If the area is gravel, is for the purposes of storing the parking trailer vehicles, I don't know that we have anything to enforce.
Okay, so in other words, if they have 83 parking spaces, but they park 90 vehicles on there because they're putting 2 or 3 here, 2 or 3 there in unmarked spaces, there's not a problem with the town as far as that goes?
Not unless they're parking in an area that you can't park in, like the front lawn
Okay.
or in the detention pond or in the stream. I mean,
Okay.
I would submit to you that the prior owner of this building, with the idea that large area of parking really didn't have any designation or striping, I used the word helter-skelter before, they were parked any way they wanted to. There was
That's
a lot
not
of.
true. That's not true.
There was a,
That's
there
a
was,
lie.
You'll have your opportunity, sir. Please.
okay, there was at times, I've observed over there that they, cars crossed or whatever else because it wasn't the most efficient way to do it. That's why we did the restriping.
I'm not understanding helter-skelter, what does that mean?
Well-
They parked any which way, it was mayhem?
Well, I won't say mayhem, but the cars were
just
not,
don't
the
know.
cars and vehicles there were not parked in the most efficient manner as we're designing now, that's all I'm saying.
Okay,
Okay?
fair enough.
Just a quick question about the gravel areas. Is the fact that the gravel used to get around exceeding the impervious coverage, is there a reason why it's not paved?
We could pave it.
We could pave it.
You know, I don't see it.
Are we getting close to the maximum allowable?
No.
Now,
Now, if you bear in mind, and I know you didn't hear the original version of this application, we had twice as much proposed pavement. We cut it down with respect to the environmental concerns with the DP, the wetlands, the LOI, but we had proposed and we're conforming in terms of impervious coverage. Those gravel areas could certainly be paved and not have an issue with impervious coverage.
Thank you.
I don't think there's any impervious coverage in the other fields. Yeah, just so I think we're all clear, I just had to check. there's no maximum impervious coverage in the L2.
No.
There's building coverage only.
That's it.
Well, I
As an
still,
alternate, we could, just a suggestion, if you think fencing there would be better than arborvitae, we're open to that. Or both.
Why don't you, see what you can do, I mean, even if you can, what, there's 4 trailers parked there, you've got 4 spaces.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Why don't you parallel park 2 of them over here? In 16 and 20. Reduces the exposure to the neighbor.
How close are the neighbors to that
We-
point?
We've been, hold it, I want the record clear.
Yeah, sir, you
We'll get that on
can't-
the record.
Sir, you cannot
We'll get on the
speak
record.
while this, you're gonna have an opportunity to speak, but we have to have a clear record of what's going on. You just can't interrupt during his testimony. You'll have an opportunity to question him when Mr. Whitaker's done, so please. You can't interrupt or you're gonna have to leave, okay?
The point is, it looks like they're about, what are these, 20-foot stalls? What is it? 9 by 18. 18-foot stall, all right, call them 20-foot stalls. So it's 40 feet closer to the neighbors than stalls 1 through 11. Or 36 feet closer to the neighbors than stalls 1 through 11, regardless of what that exists in.
This, the Marlowe's tenant space is on the west side, so operationally, it makes sense.
That's the point.
So we'll take it under advisement. Just realize, though, that we've been given permission from zoning to do that now, so it exists.
I understand all
Just,
that.
but I don't know, I know you understand, I just want everybody to understand. That's all I'm saying, put it on the record.
Permission to do what? What was, I missed it, I'm sorry. Permission?
We
to
have,
do?
the tenants that are there now, and the parking that's there now, has been granted when we got our permission to go into the building.
Yeah, we'll get to tenants as well. I'm curious to get some testimony on that. I don't know what's in the building and how they're using it, but we'll get to that when you guys are ready. So I didn't get an answer. How close are the residents to that section? Are they 10 feet? Are they 100 feet? I don't know what's on that side.
It's approximately 50 or 60 feet to the property line.
Okay.
And that's the
And then
property
there's a
line.
building structure, right, I understand.
And
To their
well,
property
then there's a
line.
bridge to get over the stream, and then the house. The house is further in that northwest corner, the house is on the other side of the stream. So you go down the driveway, that borders the west side of this property, across the stream.
And you're saying there's a significant enough of a buffer to muzzle the noise? Sounds like, is that right?
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
50 or 60
Yeah.
feet, I'm just looking at spatial relationship. 50 or 60 feet from the back of that gravel area to the property line?
Yeah, that's what he said.
I'll pull out my scale and measure it a little more precisely for you. I can find it. I will say I misspoke. I was going visually from the parking stall 15.
You can't do
From,
that, because that's not.
From the
bear
gravel
with me,
area.
from the gravel,
From the back of the gravel.
from the back of the gravel area to the property line is 42 feet.
Okay, so, a little closer. Wasn't that far.
Mr. Westbrook, do you know, I mean, you're testifying as a civil engineer, but do you know if the vehicles that are kept there with the trailers have beeping mechanisms when they reverse?
I don't know.
I'm gonna have the operator testify later.
Yes, Judge, I will. Judge, I'm sorry, Mr. Williams. I haven't been in court in a while, so. I just thought I'd ask and it came to mind, but, okay, proceed.
Yeah, Mr. Westbrook, you testified as to the landscaping aspect. Let's just go back. There's a few other improvements that are being proposed with this amended site plan. One pertains to the lighting. Can you show the lighting?
Yes, currently there's poles that date back from the original construction around the perimeter of the pavement area and pole mounted fixtures. We are in, I'll turn to L1, which is the lighting plan. And we are proposing new lighting around the developed portion of the property, certainly up in the northeast corner where there's no use. We're not proposing any fixtures up there. Sorry, I'll wait. What we're proposing is light fixtures, LED fixtures, 3,000 K maximum, with conforming foot candle levels measured at the property line. We are exceeding at the driveway entrance, but that's typically accepted. Actually, it's recommended to exceed a little higher foot candle at driveway entrances by stop signs. So we were asked, or I was asked at one point, could we just light the new parking? And I said, well, look at your existing lighting on the site. It really needs to be updated as well. So that's what's proposed.
So the original lighting that was put in is long before the current ordinances in the Township of Whitehall, correct?
Correct.
And so Mr. DeGennaro in his report stated that the lighting now complies.
Correct.
And you've made a plan here that is code compliant as far as lighting is concerned, correct?
Yes.
In looking at this lighting plan, all the zeros denote there's not gonna be any lighting, is that right? No illumination, is that what I'm looking at?
Right, in the analysis that the
Yeah.
lighting manufacturers, designers put together, all the zeros are representing 0 foot candles.
Right.
And then also I wanted to note on this plan, one of the items that Wyckoff requires is in the bottom right corner, which many towns recommend, and that is a period of time to evaluate how the lights look once they're installed.
Right. We've always stipulated with other applications that within a 6-month time period, it's revisited, and if there has to be adjustments, they're done. That's a stipulation always.
Right.
Directory sign?
I'm sorry?
Directory sign?
Yes, I'm just going to talk about the signage. You talked about, and I had used the word helpless skelter before, one of the things that this site doesn't have right now is stop signs and directional signs when you drive into the place, correct?
Correct.
All right, so we just point out now what is being proposed, traffic sign-wise, and then with a directory sign proposed.
So at each of the 2 existing curb cuts, there's no controls there today. So we're proposing stop signs, stop bars, center lines at each of them. We're also proposing traffic arrows, one-way, two-way arrows to reflect the traffic patterns. And then on the north side where it's one-way, signage to also reinforce the one-way traffic pattern. Basically give the users direction around this site where there is none today. We're also proposing just a directory sign at the, near the cul-de-sac, east of the proposed parking, a freestanding sign, directory sign meeting the town ordinance in terms of the size and shape and location, setback requirements, illumination requirements off the right of way. So, once again, to help people who are coming to the site understand which tenant space they're trying to get to, which doorway. What else we need to go over?
I think the only other thing is just to place on the record, as far as the building, we know it's not being expanded, but just place on the record, what's the building coverage and what is the maximum permitted?
Glasses again. All right. The permitted coverage is 30%. The proposed coverage is 13.4, existing coverage 13.4.
Thank you. I have nothing further at this time.
Mr. Whitaker, could you just bring Mr. Westbrook through the dimensions of the freestanding sign and what's proposed there? I don't think we have a,
Someone in the paper.
I don't believe there's a diagram of it, is there?
I think there's a citation of the code, right?
Yeah, it's going to be code compliant.
26-28.
I understand it may be code compliant, but could you go through with the proposed sizes? I mean, have you determined what the size is gonna be, or just to keep it within code?
To keep it in code, we wanted to show on the site plan that we are proposing one, but when this plan was prepared, the applicant didn't have tenants, so we didn't know what size sign he needed or nomenclature or spaces, so let's get it on the site plan so that, quite frankly, we could not need to come back here for another site plan. show that we want to have a directory sign. We're gonna have multiple tenants, and the only, we do know that we need to meet is the 20 feet off the property line. We're showing the location, the illumination requirements to code.
Mr. DeGenero, what's the maximum size allowed there, do you know? Okay, well, Mr. DeGenero is gonna look into that. So there's nothing proposed at the moment, not until you determine, not until Mr., and this is probably a question for Mr. Galasso, but is there anything anticipated right now, Mr. Whitaker, there? As
The
far as-
location that we show is what we're stipulating to, and we're stipulating that the size of the sign will be code compliant. And that's all I think I need to do as far as sizing is concerned. We're not asking for any waiver or exception.
No, I know, but in prior applications that have come before us, you know, we normally have a visual of what the sign's gonna look like, because we've often commented on how it appears and et cetera, so that's why I'm asking that.
I have no problem, I can submit a pro forma of that.
Okay,
We'll do that.
is that all you have, Mr. Westbrook?
Yes, at this time, yes.
Okay.
Oh, just one other thing, no. I'd also commented there's going to be pedestrian access now, improvements made. Can you just point that out for the board members' edification?
Well, along the proposed parking area, we're proposing a sidewalk. Currently, in the existing conditions, along that access drive on the south side, there are singular sidewalks from the access drive to the door. So in our proposed parking, with the additional parking on the south side, we're proposing a sidewalk, handicap parking, handicap ramps leading to the existing doorways.
I have a question, Mr. Westbrook. With, the size of the building is 23,371, correct? Square feet?
Yes.
Okay, so if the building were entirely converted to office at one point, then the parking requirements would be, I don't have my calculator on me, but somewhere in the 90s?
Correct.
Okay, and what you're proposing is 83 here, so it's significantly, 83 is significantly above the need you have now based on the usage of the building, correct?
Yes.
Current usage of the building?
Based on the current uses, it's more than we need today. But to your point, we could not convert this building to 100% office because we would have a shortfall of parking.
You've got office in the front only.
We'd have to seek a variance.
Is that
Right.
correct? You got office in the front?
Currently, there's office.
And warehousing in the back.
Office towards front, warehouse towards the rear.
I presume there's a demising wall going across the building on the interior, is that right?
I have Mr. Galasso testify to all that.
It's actually, based upon the
Okay.
record drawings, it's dashed on the site plan to give a rough idea where they are.
How many tenants do you have in the building?
I'd like Mr. Galasso to testify.
Oh, I'm sure the engineer knows what the usage is. He did a plan. He knows how much parking there is. He had to look at it.
All right, well,
I would be
Well, Mr. Whitaker,
surprised if
let me
he
ask you
doesn't
this
know.
question.
He doesn't know all the uses as Mr.
Okay.
Galasso, the landlord, would.
Doesn't know how many usages are in the building?
So Mr., let me just, Anthony, hold on, just to clarify, so Mr. Galasko is going to testify as to what the uses are and how much each use has?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why
And
I brought it
Mr.
here.
Westbrook is not prepared to do that at this point?
Mr. Westbrook has viewed the site, but he doesn't know each of the tenants and their particular needs. That's why I have the landlord here tonight, the owner.
Okay, very good.
Chairman, I have one.
Yes, go ahead.
I have one more
Rudy.
quick question, Mr. Westbrook. You have one dumpster here,
Correct.
Is that right?
One dumpster enclosure.
but only one box, right? Only one,
There's,
is it a solid waste container? And I'm asking, is there room for a second one for cardboard? That's what I'm asking.
right now, my
Is there
visit
any
on site,
consideration of that?
I've seen one. A 10 by 16, 16 feet wide, you should be able to get a solid container, either bins or possibly a second container in there, because there are 6.5 with the arms of the refuse truck. So you can get two small dumpsters next to each other.
I think it would be kind of the right thing to do to have a cardboard.
Right, which is why we made it the size we did. We want to be able to accommodate the need.
Thank you.
Can I ask one question?
Go ahead, Mike.
Going back a year ago, where that gravel area was, we were told there was a berm there a large berm and it was removed to create the gravel area. I mean, and there was some discussion, I think, you said we had to restore the berm potentially, because it was the original approval for that area.
There was
I
two
believe
berms?
we have an ordinance to that effect. I believe we do.
I'm pretty sure we do.
So apparently there was some type of berm there to shield.
So actually, if that's not gonna be restored, that'd be a variance request.
Yeah, that berm was probably there to shield
Good point.
from the homeowner originally, and that was removed. At least that was to testify a year ago that I remember.
Mike, they testified that there was a berm there that's deteriorated tonight. This is a second berm,
Yeah,
right?
but I think the township has an ordinance that any berm at the township's or neighbor's request, the property owner has to restore it to its original condition.
Right. That was,
If
yeah.
it degrades and a lot of, an example is a lot of those white pine screens and berms all outgrew and it was the property owner's responsibility to replace them.
My understanding, and I don't know an ordinance about berms specifically in town, my understanding from reviewing this site plan and the ordinance pertaining to this site plan is there's a buffer zone required along the property line, which is essentially off the page on the left side of this plan. So where we're talking about a berm in the gravel area, it's outside of the buffer area, which the owner of the property is required to maintain. So we're talking about not the required buffer, but an area inside of the required buffer. So and on this plan, you can see along the south property line, similarly, there's the buffer area designated. Now, there is a requirement in the zone, but it's along the property line, not set inward. So I'm not sure that it's applicable to say you need to maintain the center of your property when it's not in the buffer. I agree with you completely on the buffer area.
Okay, we will revisit that.
Yeah.
And we'll also take, as we said, we'll take a look at the design over the gravel area of fencing and arborvitae.
Or
And we
perhaps
will-
relocating some of those trailers.
And we will provide a diagram of what the sign would look like.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Anybody else have any questions on the board
Quick question.
for Mr. Westbrook? Go ahead, Scott.
So just in, real quick, 79 stalls would have been no variance needed. What's the benefit to the extra 4 that's now created a variance?
The benefits of the extra 4 is, as the chairman and I, a little bit of dialogue of, as this property, as any property that is permitted for multiple uses, industrial, office, manufacturing, as the building evolves through time, to provide sufficient parking for the matrix that could have evolved. And if this building were to be 100% office, there isn't sufficient parking at 79. Quickly, there isn't sufficient parking at 84, but it's a step closer. So it gives the owner flexibility in trying to keep the building rented, trying to keep it full.
So you foresee coming back for another variance for parking?
No,
No,
I don't foresee.
So 84 is gonna be good?
we don't foresee it being 100% office, especially in this day and age, okay? But
So
we
79 without a variance would make it.
we need flexibility. I said in my opening that I thought there was an ability to grant a variance here, because you have a very unusual shaped lot that falls within the C1 category. You have a lawfully existing building on the lot, and you have parking. This is not 4 spaces that are out there in no man's land. It's just a continuation of what we had. And when we did the design and we reviewed this, it looked appropriate to square off the parking to the far end of that building, and that was the idea. And we thought the benefits outweighed the detriments under a C2, and my criteria there was that we're trying to get enough parking there to keep, to have the ability to be flexible with a building when tenants come. And that was the concept. Okay?
I was gonna mention this, well, I'm gonna take a different tack from what Mr. Fisher has said. In looking at this, it's interesting that evidently the corner of the building was clipped to maintain the distance for the setback area. It's just the amount that they clipped the corner on the cul-de-sac side. So, and in addition to that, the extra 4 parking spaces
actually fall behind the original plane of what the building would have been were it not for the bulb of the cul-de-sac.
Right, and yet they
So
designed.
I kind of don't have a problem, and there's no structure, it's just flat pavement.
Yeah.
So I kind of don't have a problem with it, but it's interesting how they built the building, they clipped the corner to maintain the setback
Yeah,
without a variance.
it's a good point, yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions, Mr. Westbrook, this time on the board? Okay, we're going to open it up to the public. Just let me read this before we open it up to the audience who's present here. The time for, this is specifically to the people who are watching remotely. The time for public questions and comments is now open as to Mr. Westbrook's testimony. If you wish to ask a question or make a comment, please dial 201-891-7000, extension 222. We will take calls in the order in which they are received. If the line is busy, please wait a moment and then try again. You will be able to easily observe when a call has been completed as you are watching the meeting live on YouTube. Once you are on the line, we will ask that you mute the device on which you are watching the live stream as to minimize any interference with the audio. So if you're watching remotely now and you do have a question or questions of Mr. Westbrook, please dial into 201-891-7000, extension 222. And Maureen, you'll monitor that, correct? And we will call up members of the audience. I know one gentleman at least has some comments to make. Could you whoever wants to talk first, if you want to come forward and identify yourself, please, and your address.
Mr. Chairman, we also have direction that the questions would be asked on the basis of the testimony that Mr. Westbrook gave. I just want to distinguish it because I do have someone to testify as to the environmental constraints on the property separately.
Okay, fair enough. So in other words, Mr. Whitaker is going to be presenting an environmental expert to testify.
Correct.
So please limit your questions at this time to what Mr. Westbrook has testified to as a civil engineer. Come forward, sir. What's your name, sir?
Tim Brackett,
Hi, Mr. Brackett. What's your address?
358 Crescent Avenue, Wyckoff, New Jersey.
And Mr. Brackett, where is your property in relation to the building? If you could just show us.
West of the building.
On the south side?
No, sir, west.
West side? I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Okay.
Right in here.
Can you put the microphone up so he can speak into the microphone a little bit, please?
So, Mr. Brackett, your
Thank you.
property is to the southwest of the building?
Correct.
And you border, your property borders the property
Yes,
issue
sir.
here? Okay.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead, sir.
I want to step back to April of 2019, when, and I'm afraid I only have one copy of this, when Mr. Boonstra brought up the fact that a berm had to be maintained.
Excuse me,
Yes, Mr. Hamlin.
you're here right now to cross-examine. If the board allows him to give testimony, he has to be sworn in.
Okay, why don't you swear Mr. Brackett in?
You raise your right hand, please.
Sure,
You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Okay.
But I'm just going to place on the record my objection. The concept now is for the applicant to present a case, and anyone can ask questions of his witness. It's not the time for another witness in opposition to come in and start testifying.
Well,
That's not how it's done.
I think if he's just going to give background to lead into his questioning, that would be proper. If he wants to testify completely, I think then you'd have to come back, you'd have to come back when it's your turn.
In other words,
All right.
Mr. Brackett, if you,
If you want to put it into some sort of context and then ask questions, and it's brief, that's allowable on cross-examination,
Okay.
all right? After they're finished with their case, then anyone else could come up and bring their case and bring testimony. And that would be the time to give extensive testimony.
Okay.
We're giving you some leeway here so that your questions could be put into a context, but we can't allow it to be your case being put in.
Right, I understand.
and keep in mind, Mr. Brackett, that not all the members of the board were present at that prior hearing. So
Okay.
we're essentially starting anew, so if you do have something you want to reference, you should explain it as opposed to just say, what happened at the prior hearing.
Okay, all right. What I'd like to say is that gravel area that was in discussion before where the trailers are backed up, that was not there previously.
What
That
do you,
had already,
not there previously, what do you mean not there and when?
not there prior to 2018. That, those trees were removed, and that gravel area was built, so the trailer could be backed up to 35 feet within my property line.
It was just earth?
There was a berm there.
There was
The trees were cut down over the course of 2 days.
All right, we're gonna have.
Okay, I think we're right into the area of testifying.
Okay.
Mr. Brackett, I think it'd be maybe more appropriate after Mr. Galasso testifies, because I think what you're stating is that the work was done after he purchased the property, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So with that in mind, do you have any questions directly? You're going to have an opportunity, but
Okay.
at the moment, do you have any questions of the engineer specifically? Mr. Galasso's
No, I
going to
do not.
testify,
I
and
do not.
you can certainly talk, ask him questions or raise those issues at that time.
Okay. I
Okay?
do not have any questions of the engineer.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Brackett. You'll have an opportunity later. Anybody else present in the courtroom like to come forward?
Just a very small comment based on.
What's your name, sir?
Mitch Shoyak, 352 Crescent Ave.
And where's your property?
Shoick.
And where's your property, sir, in relation to the?
It's right behind the gravel pit.
What's the address?
352 Crescent.
Are you Mr. Brackett's immediate neighbor?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're on a shared driveway.
Okay.
So what I wanted to just say is that the engineer testified, I forget exactly, maybe he said 40 feet, 60 feet, or something like that, but I would invite anyone in the board tomorrow to come to my home and just stand by the trailer, the last trailer, and then pace it to my house, and probably in 10 steps, you're on my driveway.
Well, what I would suggest, sir, is there's a high likelihood that this matter is not going to be resolved tonight. So my suggestion would be to take, because I've driven the site, but I didn't specifically look to see where your property was in
Right.
relation. My suggestion would be to any interested parties to take photos and even measurements showing, so that if you come back here on another night, we can see what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
I could give you a photo tonight, I have some on my phone.
Well, I think you need to make copies so that
Okay.
everybody can see on the board.
Okay.
As opposed to passing your phone.
Okay.
But Mr. Chairman, just so I'm clear,
Yeah.
because the engineer did testify to 42 feet. And then, I didn't hear what you said. How far is it?
So basically what happens is there's a lot, and what my neighbor was trying to say is the applicant chopped down trees to extend the lot so that his trailers fit, because his trailers wouldn't fit if he keeps them on the pavement. That's what this is all about. So he backs it off into the trailer, which is like right in view of our homes, and because he chopped the trees down, it's a real eyesore. These are really fluorescent trailers. So what we asked, and I asked Mr. Galasso personally, can we put up a fence or trees or anything way before this ever happened? You know, I mean, literally, if he did that, I wouldn't even be
You
there.
saw him face to face?
Yeah.
You
And
talked
he agreed to me that he would do this, but it's a year and a half later and nothing's been done. So I'd like to ask the board to say, and by the way, if you can come look, I mean, there's fallen trees everywhere, it's an eyesore.
Really?
So what I would like is is on a condition of giving waivers for him to do other things on the building, is if at least he can fix what he did without coming to the board, that he should have brought to the
Well,
board.
sir, I think I'm going to say the same thing we said to Mr. Brackett. So
Okay.
I think you're going to have an opportunity
All right.
to raise your issues. Do you have
Fair
any
enough.
questions specifically of the?
Only that I think he misrepresented where the trailers are versus the homes.
So you didn't give me an answer on how far it is. That's what I'm waiting for. How far is it from your
Did you
property?
measure the distance?
If I stand,
Well,
if
let
I
me
stand behind the trailer, I could see my front house, my front door easy, and I could, I could throw a baseball,
20
hit my
feet?
door. Probably,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, we're gonna have the measurements for the next
Oh,
meeting.
fair
we know
enough.
that.
Fair enough.
Okay, sir, you're going to have another opportunity. Is anybody else from the audience present in the courtroom? No? Maureen, is anybody called in?
No, we would have heard it ringing. right
Okay.
now.
Okay, so no,
Can I just say one other thing?
is it relevant to
It's more
the?
about process. It's more about the process.
Well, you're going to have an opportunity,
Okay.
sir. Let's,
Well, I think that's the reason why there aren't a lot of people here that I
well,
wanted to
you're going to have an opportunity to talk about that. Right now, Mr. Whitaker's putting on his case.
Fair enough.
He's going to bring on his witnesses.
Okay.
We'll have an opportunity to question each witness, and at the end, okay, you're going to have an opportunity to speak freely when Mr. Whitaker's case is done. And frankly, at that point, you'll have heard more things. So my suggestion is keep some notes, and then you'll have free opportunity for that. I appreciate your patience, I know it's difficult, but we gotta keep some kind of order, you understand? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Whitaker, why don't you proceed?
I thought you had to ask questions of people that are on the telephone. or
There's
what?
no, Maureen's indicated
Oh, I'm
nobody's,
sorry, I didn't hear that, okay.
Maureen's indicated that nobody has called in, so.
Okay, thank you.
So we're going to close the public session with regard to questions of Mr., of the civil engineer, Mr. Westbrook.
Call my next witness, Mr. Kousakis?
Koudizakis.
Koudizakis, I'm sorry. Apologize. Hard to read with this man.
It's a hard name.
It's hard. If you raise your right hand, Mr. Hanley will swear you in.
Coming to swear him in?
No, excuse me, I'm trying to get his name down. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
State your name and spell it, please.
Yes.
And give us your address, business address, and that's it.
Yes, the name is Chris Koudizakis. The last name is Koutouzakis. I guess a professional affiliation, I work for Ecol Sciences Incorporated. We're at 75 Fleetwood Drive in Rockaway, New Jersey. I have a bachelor's degree in biology. I have a master's in environmental toxicology. I've been in the environmental consulting field for about 23 years, primarily focused on wetlands delineation, threatened and endangered species, natural resources work. I am also a professional wetland scientist recognized by the Society of Wetland Scientists.
Mr. Kousakis, you have been employed and engaged by the applicant, am I correct, in doing an analysis from a wetlands perspective?
Yes, sir.
I would ask that this witness be qualified as an expert witness in that field, and on the basis of that, render an expert opinion in that field.
Can we ask what other boards he's?
Yes.
He's appeared in front of?
Have you appeared in front of any other
Yes, I have.
planning or zoning boards?
I have.
If so, which ones?
In Hillsborough, on numerous occasions, Township of Montgomery, Bordentown, a couple others I think I can remember, Branchburg, and Roseland and West Caldwell, all within the past 10 years or so.
And in connection with your involvement in doing wetlands delineation, are you in charge at Ecol Sciences of submitting such applications and working with the DEP in processing such applications?
Yes, sir, it's a primary duty.
And in connection with this type of duty and this type of work, are you familiar with and work with the DEP regulations that govern wetlands, floodplains, flood hazard areas, and the like?
Yes, sir, I do.
And he's going to testify strictly with regard to the wetlands issue on this property, Mr. Whitaker?
He's going to testify how he submitted the application, what he had to do to submit the application. The wetlands LOI speaks for itself. This is not a hearing to try to overturn a wetlands determination, but rather the board asked me a year and a half ago, and the applicant, to investigate this. We did. We got the LOI and submitted it, but I want to put it on the record as to how that was done. One of the waivers we're requesting is for a waiver from the EIS, and what he will testify to in my proffer is the work that he had to do in submission to the DEP is more extensive than what the EIS requires.
Okay. Well, I think it's appropriate to recognize him for the purpose of testifying as to the wetlands issue.
Thank you.
And he was directly involved in the application, correct, Mr. Whitaker?
That's my first question. Okay. In being engaged by the applicant, I would like you to explain what involvement you had and what you had to do prior to submitting such an application.
I'll try to make it brief, but I mean, I did an essential walkthrough analysis of the property just to identify to the client whether there were wetlands or state open waters present. From that point, which I did discover wetlands and state open waters on the property. At that point, I was contracted to delineate the wetlands, which is essentially by examining vegetation, soils and the hydrology, signs of water at or near the surface at the site. I hang survey flags out at the site along the boundary of the wetland. At that point, the survey points get picked up, they get put on a plan, and the plan gets submitted to the NJDEP for their inspection of the site. They come out and do a site inspection and check the work that is done, and then they give their approval, or disapproval for that matter, but they give their approval, and they give their approval for this letter of interpretation. And that essentially indicates the line that is acceptable between the wetlands and the uplands on the site, but they also give a resource value classification for the wetlands, and that in so many words is essentially, these are intermediate value wetlands, which is a typical wetland, and that determines what type of buffer you have on the wetland, versus an exceptional resource value wetland, which would have a buffer of 150 feet, which is also a regulated area by the state. The intermediate wetlands have a buffer of 50 feet, which is also a regulated area.
Hold on just a minute.
Yes, sir.
I mean, if he could speak loud enough, maybe we can turn that one off again.
We'll just step back.
Yeah, maybe if you step, no, that doesn't seem to be working.
The locals, turn the corner.
Yeah, well, it's aiming towards.
It's aiming towards that mic, that speaker up there.
Yeah, maybe that's just.
I can't tilt it down so it'll fall out.
All right, let's hope that
All
sticks.
right, I'll try not to interrupt you, but if we get a lot of feedback, I mean, I don't have a choice. Thanks. Go ahead.
So on the basis of what you've just stated, is it correct to say that you followed the protocol that's required by the NJDEP in doing this analysis?
Yes,
And on the basis of the submission you've made, I'm showing you what we've marked as A1, which is a letter from the NJDEP. Do you recognize that?
yes, I do.
Would you explain to us what the contents of that letter provide?
This is the freshwater wetlands letter of interpretation, line verification, which in so many words, it's a line verification. This officially verifies the line that exists out on the site as the official state-recognized wetlands line.
Now, you worked, am I correct, in conjunction with Mr. Westbrook in connection with the plans that have been submitted and delineating those lines on the plan?
Yes, sir.
And you checked it, and the plans represent the correct delineation as per the letter that you have in your hand?
Yes, sir.
There's also a application made as it pertains to flood hazard area, is that correct?
That is correct.
And you were in charge and involved in getting that task completed.
Yes, I was.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as A2 and explain what that is and what that, what had to be done and what the results are from that letter.
This next exhibit is a flood hazard area applicability determination. And essentially what we did here is we took their plan for the parking at the site, and with the regulated areas on the plan, submitted that to the NJDEP. With what it is this is actually has to deal solely with the Ho-Hocus Brook, the flood hazard area associated with Ho-Hocus Brook, and any riparian zone that waterway has. So those are regulated areas by the state of New Jersey, one of the regulated areas by the NJDEP. So essentially the plan that we submitted, it's essentially asking, is the Flood Hazard Area Control Act applicable to any of the activities we're proposing on site? And if so, how is it applicable? And in the letter, as essentially it, with their review, you could even read, he states the flood hazard area elevation, but essentially, there's no activity proposed in the flood hazard area. And he notes that all the activity within the stream's riparian zone is in an actively disturbed area. So he then quotes, the letter then quotes a section of the New Jersey Code, one of the rules from the Flood Hazard Area Control Act, and it says that would apply to the project. And what it is a permit by rule. It's permit by rule number 10 of the Flood Hazard Area Control Act, and it has to do with general construction activities in a riparian zone, but not in a flood hazard area. And it has a list of conditions of which this project meets. And if you meet the conditions listed underneath the permit by rule, then no further approval or notification of the state is required.
Now, is this a very standard approach in an analysis and in completion of a project like this?
It can vary. In a project like this, yes, it applied.
And on the basis of that, it's understood that the applicant's proposal here will meet all of the guidelines and the requirements. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
I have nothing further.
So as I understand it, Mr. Kudasakis, you're testifying that the DEP has no problem with what's being proposed by Mr. Galasso in this application? Is that-
What I'm stating is, yes, they're not going to require any formal application of any additional permitting that would be required.
Well, the line is delineated by this.
Correct. They're not proposing, I'm sorry to interrupt, they're not proposing any impacts to the wetlands or transition areas on site, which if they were, that would require a permit or a waiver to adjust the transition area. That's not happening. The only thing that's happening is there are activities within a riparian zone, which is associated with Ho-Hocus Brook on the border of the site. But those activities under the applicability determination are all acceptable because they're not happening in the flood hazard area. They're happening in a riparian zone. It's a disturbed riparian zone, which is important to note. Essentially just lawn.
What does that mean?
That means essentially it's maintained lawn area or paved developed area. Gravel areas, parking lots, lawn areas are all considered actively disturbed areas as per the Flood Hazard Area Control Act.
So correct to say that what they are looking at there is areas that existing are disturbed?
I'm sorry?
The areas that they've looked at in the riparian is areas that are already disturbed.
Yes.
And that is what gives them recite the regulations that you've recited as far as the permit by rule.
Yes, sir.
And I just provided Mr. Hanley a copy of that excerpt.
So,
He doesn't have to go looking for it.
so Mr. Kudasakis, just so we're clear, so this application, as it's being presented to us today, was presented to the DEP as part of your application to them?
A plan was presented to DEP with what is being proposed, yes.
Okay. What we have before us?
Yes.
A2 has references that map.
You walked the property?
Yes, I conducted the delineation on the site. I've been to the site at least 3 times.
What was your opinion as to the bridge, the collapsed bridge?
You know what? I have the same opinion as Mr. Westbrook. I walked on the bridge. I don't remember if it had really settled because I wasn't really, looking at it. I was looking at the stream next to it and the wetlands around it.
You had no opinion of the bridge collapsing?
No.
His assignment out there was to look at 3 aspects from a wetlands perspective. What are those 3 aspects?
Well,
vegetation, hydrology, and soil.
Excuse me.
Well, let him answer the question.
But the question is that there's a stream there, right? And there's a bridge blocking the stream. I would imagine it would pop out at you as a major issue.
Water was flowing at the time. That's all I could say. I'm not an engineer, so I can't tell you. I don't know how much water goes.
The engineer should have an opinion on it?
I haven't, engineers do flood hazard area calculations. I mean, there's things you have to, if you're contracted
You're on
to
the
do.
ecology side, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. So the engineer should have the opinion on the bridge.
If that
Okay.
is his job.
Understood. Okay.
What was the question you asked of him, Mr. Whitaker, the 3?
Well, as I've learned it, there's 3 aspects in reviewing a site as it pertains to wetlands.
Well, for wetlands, just the vegetation, the hydrology, and the soils.
Right.
And what do you mean by hydrology?
Hydrology, signs of water at or near the surface. And there are things you can look at to be able to tell if you don't see water at the surface.
Okay. That's all the questions you have of Mr. Kudasakis, Mr.?
Yes, but my purpose is not to just present to you the NJDEP letter and call it a night, but rather to show you what the gentleman did so that we have that on the record. And it's, as he stated, it's an extensive work. That's why we're here in September, since the January we left, because it takes that long to get this type of analysis done, submitted, and get a response from NJDEP. the town was already put on notice of this when we went to do the analysis.
Do any other members of the board have any questions of this witness?
Just a question, you mentioned flooding, these 32 additional spots, where does all this water drain? Doesn't it all drain to the brook?
I assume, most of everything is pitched towards the brook
Towards the
on that
brook.
property.
So you don't think 32 more spots is gonna cause additional water into the brook?
That's not my
He's
expertise.
not an engineer for drainage. He's here for the ecological analysis.
Well, the drainage calculations were reviewed by you, correct, Mark?
Yes.
There has to be a zero net increase, is that correct? So you made a determination in this site that there's a zero net increase based, even with the additional proposed parking areas?
Yes. Contained in the last report.
Okay, anybody else have any other questions?
Somebody's dialing in on this phone.
I think Rudy's phone may have died, so that might be John on.
Bonus, Rudy, bonus for you.
Isn't it plugged in?
Is it plugged in? It looks like
I
there's,
don't know what's going on, there's just another call trying to.
oh, is that yours?
Maybe the plug doesn't work, huh?
George, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here.
John, are you still there?
Mr. Chairman, should we take a recess? One of your members left.
One of our members left?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Actually, John texted on the chat in the YouTube that he was disconnected and that he was listening on YouTube.
Oh, okay.
This
Yeah.
phone is,
Why don't we, since one of our members apparently stepped out, why don't we take a 5-minute recess? Mr.
Thank you.
Whitaker? Thank you
Charge around it.
Thanks for bringing that to my attention.
I don't know, this is a charger here, but it didn't work.
George, we're taking a brief recess, all right? You're still on the line. Just keep in mind, everybody, that these mics are still live.
I'm going for water.
No, George, you might as well hang on. I got you plugged in, so.
Oh, here we go, yeah, okay. Yeah, House coming back, okay.
Well, it's a good thing.
So, well, just,
This-
yeah, yeah. It'll take a little time, it'll take a little time.
All right.
Oh, God.
Sorry about that, I didn't mean to
That's
catch
okay,
you
that's
there.
okay, that's okay. Thank you for catching me.
I didn't want you to fall.
Thank you for catching me.
I'll do that anytime.
Oh, my God.
No, that's all
Yeah, I'll take care of it. I'll take care of it, yeah. So, thank you. Thank you for all your help. Appreciate it.
Good?
I'm good with 10:30. I am. Prefer not to go to 11.
No, all right, I'll ask you.
So do I. How early is your
Did
morning?
he
Mine's
just say
4
we're
o'clock.
gonna end at 10:30?
We're gonna go to 10:30.
Okay.
Mike, how you been?
4 o'clock.
Good, how you been?
Pretty good, man.
Haven't seen you much,
I know.
except on Zoom.
By force.
And Zoom was easy.
Hopefully, we get back to normal quickly, but we shall see.
It's not gonna be quick.
Don't think so.
We shall see.
I can see that was, it's gonna go.
I had always predicted we would be going through 2021.
I figured it'd be next year for
Yeah.
a real vaccine to be
I
tested
think
and
if
distributed.
we have some type of normalcy by April and May, the third one.
The one vaccine.
I hope
I
you're right.
talked with a couple of doctor clients of mine that are involved in the clinical tests. And that's what they told me.
Somebody died.
They said, don't.
Really?
hold your
Oh, I
hopes.
didn't see that.
They said the trials take that long, and they can't rush them. then the other thing I learned
Somebody died from
is
it.
that
I
the
didn't hear that.
No.
I heard they told
temperature
them.
they have to
They
keep
didn't
this
die,
at
they had some
vaccine
type of
is like 30
reaction
to
or
40
something.
degrees below
So
zero.
there was a
And he said what they don't have right now, they've got to do in the military.
One of them
which
builds
they've
up
done.
your antibodies.
Appropriations. They've got to
But
build
then I'm hearing
warehouses
the
that can hold
antibodies
that
are
kind
only
of
good for 4
refrigeration
months.
and trucks to get it to Walgreens.
That would mean you need another vaccine bid.
No, the other, the other issue
That's
is,
a whole,
Wow.
vaccines.
he said, so as we do all these trials, he said, there's a gap in logistics.
100.
Yeah, a practical issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And he's involved with the trials are going on in Hackensack.
and then you're gonna have to have all kinds of training to, administer it. It's not gonna be that easy, so we'll see.
Vaccine.
My father-in-law's a doctor, he said one of the vaccines has to be stored at -100.
That's
Yeah,
what
that's what I
Bruce was
was
just
saying, yeah.
saying.
They say, I spoke to a doctor,
-40.
said logistically, they don't have the facility.
Right, nobody does.
No. No.
And then you're gonna have to, be trained by, the federal government on how to, why, administer it.
But is that unique to this particular vaccine? There's no
They're
vaccine?
hoping it's gonna be, they're hoping it's one shot and not two.
No, you might need it multiple times.
Yeah.
Because the
They're
antibodies
saying,
may not last.
Pfizer's in the lead and
They're saying 4 months.
Oxford.
Hey, we're back in business.
Now Pfizer's in the lead.
That's what I heard, yeah. Doctor friend of mine is
Was
involved
that it?
with
It
that
was
in Hackensack.
the plug wasn't working?
And my father-in-law is just a general practitioner.
Yeah, plug.
He reads the journals
Oh, yeah,
all the
yeah.
time.
Because I heard it, I thought I heard it die out. It went bloop.
Welcome to the board.
Oh, thank you.
Well, this is our longest meeting of the year.
I know, it's funny because
Yeah, this is
Rudy's
right.
like the zoning board meetings, I was on the zoning board. It's so much longer than the
See,
planning board meeting.
I kept you out late at the zoning board meeting myself, so.
Yeah, Anthony kept us a 10-minute meeting.
Is everybody, I
This
guess
is going
Maureen's
smoothly.
Well, your first meeting was about 15 minutes total?
I don't even think it was.
Yeah,
It was fast.
I said, oh.
Is he on already?
Bob, I don't have his number. I got one more witness, will we put him on tonight?
Yeah, Bruce, I was gonna announce, we're gonna go to about 10:30, all right?
I'll have him testify to it, then I'm going to go back to the next meeting with the revisions.
Okay.
Fencing.
All right, we'll see how much we can get on with him, and there's gonna be some questioning of Mr. Galasso, I'm sure. Is he representing KO? Is he
Yeah,
representing?
yeah. He does a lot of applications. And in front of the zoning.
Well, that's what happens when they do a few, people say, well, I know the board.
He's very detailed, very good.
Denise is there, she's in the other room.
Hey, John, it's Rudy.
We're just waiting for
Sorry
Kevin,
to-
Kevin Hanley?
Are you, evidently the plug that I borrowed didn't work. I got a different plug now, and the battery went dead, so we're back in business here. If you want to stay. Okay. Yeah, okay. So you want to hang, you want to stay on here now or stay with YouTube?
No,
Okay, sounds good. Okay, John, very good. Yep. Right.
We need him to potentially go.
he's on YouTube, he can't talk.
Yeah, YouTube, you don't listen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, if he has any
Yeah.
questions, he can't even make it.
In fact, I think the only person, or you know what, I think the only person who's not here is Mr. Hanley, but I'm gonna make an announcement for the public. Mr. Hanley's the board attorney, I don't think we need him for this. He should be back in a moment. So, any other members of the board, any other questions before we open it to the public? No? Actually, we might need him here before the, any members of the public in person have questions of Mr. Koutasakis regarding testimony he just presented? Anybody? No? Okay, anybody who's maybe watching this on YouTube, if you have any questions, please dial, of Mr. Koutasakis, please dial into 201-891-7000, extension 222. We'll give about a minute to see if anybody calls in on that. And Maureen, just let me know if somebody does call in.
Oh, you'll hear it then.
Oh, okay. Get the audio too. That'll give Mr. Hanley some time to get back to. Okay, Mr. Hanley's back. Maureen, has anybody called in? Okay, so nobody has called in on the video feed or on the YouTube, so we will close the public questioning of Mr. Kudasakis. And Mr. Whitaker, you can move on to your next witness.
Thank you. Well, Mr. Galasso?
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Swear you in, please? Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
Could you state your name and your address?
Yes. Amato Galasso, spelled Amato Galasso, address 315 Meadowbrook Road, Wyckoff, New Jersey.
Proceed, Mr. Whitaker.
Thank you. Mr. Galasso, the address you gave is your home address, correct?
That is correct.
So you are a resident in Wyckoff?
Yes, I am.
And are you a principal and owner of Galasso Enterprises, the applicant?
Yes, one of the owners.
And you took ownership of this in 2018, is that correct?
That is correct.
And I would like you to explain just about a little bit of your involvement with the building. By that I mean, is this a building that you are at each day, or is this a building that somebody else manages?
No, I am actually at the building every day.
And you're there because?
I'm one of the owner, well, I am the owner of Entertainment on Wheels, which is one of the tenants located in the building.
And when you purchased this building, is it correct to say that one of the things you anticipated doing was to locate your business there?
Yes.
And what does your business consist of?
I have a mobile entertainment company. We have video game trailers, and I'm sure if you've seen them floating around town, amongst other entertainment type activities, but everything's mobile, that it goes out to people's homes, schools, town functions, and all that.
And do you have occupancy of the building itself also, is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Okay, now, one of the questions asked by board members pertains to the tenant occupancies that are there now. Are you familiar with them? I mean, in essence,
Yes.
are you in essence the landlord for this building?
Yes, I handle the management for the property, yes.
So you're involved with the lease negotiations, finalization of leases and things like that?
Correct, yes.
Okay. What is your background education-wise?
I started with Seton Hall University, graduated in 1993 as an accounting major. Later went to Seton Hall Law School, graduated in 1997.
So you are a licensed attorney also?
Yes, I am.
So with that said, I'd like you to just walk us through the tenant occupancy in the building.
Which map would you like me to use?
Whatever,
I'll point it there.
point to this one here because it'll be on the screen.
Well, there's three sections really of the building. They're almost each one of them about 8,000 square foot. The one with the triangle, with that cutout in it, currently is located with IPI. It's a floor restoration company. I don't know the exact details of what they do, but I know they work with all major companies around the country, and they do on-site work on their locations. Then there was a...
So what do they have there? They have offices and they have warehousing space?
That is correct. They have mostly offices and a small area of warehousing. Originally, I think it was half and half, but then they added more office area over the years, but that was prior to my ownership.
Correct to say that they were there before you took ownership of the building?
Correct, yes.
How many square feet?
Well, I want to say they're less, each section of the other two sections are 8,000, so whatever's left over is theirs of that 23,000, so it's maybe 7,000 and change, like 7,300, something around there.
Between the office and the warehouse?
Correct, yes.
And you said they do what? IPI?
IPI, it's interior preservation installation. I don't know the exact what the acronym of the company is, but I do know that they do floor restorations, installations. They do concrete setups. They go out. I know their biggest account was Apple at one time, where they would do the flooring for Apple and everything.
So this is their home base, but they go out to service?
Correct. Yes, all around the world actually.
Okay.
And more than 3,500 of that 7,000 something square feet is office, you said?
Yes, I know that, like, if you were looking at the map right here, I know that it goes, actually, there's a delineation right here. If you look on the map, you can see that whole area, basically around the perimeter, is all offices, and this is their warehouse area, just in this small section over here.
Nice.
Yeah, it used to be all the way across, they told me, and then they added those offices. I know there was permits, and they got that, because they were doing more office than they needed warehouse space at the time. I had discussions. IPI was one of the previous owners of the building which we purchased from, so I had a lot of discussions with him when we were negotiating the purchase of the property.
How many employees do they have?
That varies. I don't know exactly how many employees I have. I can tell you that on a regular basis, I see 2 women in the office. I see 1, 2, 3 other gentlemen that are usually working there. The owner of the building is basically between here and Florida, so I don't know what his deal is. And they have a lot of employees that come on site. I know they pick up equipment and they go out. Most of their work, I know, is after hours, and this is up until, I want to say pre-COVID. I don't know exactly what their business is since COVID's happened, but pre-COVID, I know most of their employees would come in the afternoons, pick up trucks, and then go out, and they would come back in the middle of the night, they come back late, because they do all their work on site after hours.
These are the laborers or the
Yeah.
technicians?
Yeah,
installers?
Installers and that's,
They're doing it after the business has been operating.
Yeah.
Understood.
They used to tell me that they would literally go in, do the work, and then clean up before the next day even.
They tend to work in the
Yeah.
evening hours?
Correct, yeah.
And how many guys is that? 5?
Oh, no, I think it was a lot of them. I don't know the exact numbers, I don't know the details. I would say there could have probably been, there's been days when I've seen day laborers there, maybe 10 to 15 of them minimum.
Okay.
So I'm gonna ask you what the other tenants are that you have there, then I'm gonna go into your observations pertaining to the current parking arrangements.
Okay. So the other tenant prior to this was US Laser Corporation. They had 16,000 square feet. They basically the rest of the building. He had both of the center sections.
Excuse me, US what
It
corporation?
was called US Laser. And he's been there since, that company was there since the outset when the building was created.
But he's not there now?
He's no longer there. He retired about a year and a half ago, I'd say. Yeah.
So is the rest of the building vacant?
No, now it's occupied by Entertainment on Wheels. And Entertainment on Wheels, we have an agreement with the town that I could sublease certain sections of it. And I go to them with every time I have a new tenant that wants a sublease from my general lease that I have, that Entertainment on Wheels has for the whole entire 16,000 square feet.
Okay. So you have subtenants in the other 16,000 square
Correct,
feet?
yeah. I operate a certain amount and they sublease from me.
So let's walk through this.
Okay.
So am I correct in saying that each time that you have a tenant coming into your building under a sublease, that you're going to the town, to the zoning officer and getting approvals for them?
Correct, yes.
And so all the tenants that currently occupy the space have had approvals granted by the township?
Some of them are under review right now, but yes, they all did.
Okay. So those tenants that are there, just describe to the board, give us their names and what kind of use they have.
Okay. Entertainment on Wheels, I don't know if I need to explain any further.
You've explained that already.
Well, that's the second business, right?
The Entertainment on Wheels section, is that, you store things there, or you?
Yes, so we operate our offices out of there,
Okay.
we do our, bookings, all that kind of stuff like that, scheduling staff. We do our maintenance of equipment and in the warehouse area, which is basically primarily the center section the first section of the 16,000 square feet, that warehouse, but we occupy those offices in there too. And it's delineated because it's more than 4,000, the office is probably 3,000 square feet, and the remaining is about 5,000 square feet of that section is us, because there's an extra loading dock area, like a garage door.
Is there any activity, like customers come there, or
No.
anything like that?
No customers, no, everything is done off-site, Well, at times, a customer will want to take a look at the trailer, just so they see what it is, but we don't do any kind of events, we don't do anything on-site, nothing like that, no.
Trailers outside?
Trailers are outside, yes.
So you're occupying 8,000 square feet?
Really 16, I have the whole 16.
I understand,
and
but what you're actually using for your own purpose?
Oh, no, I do use some of the middle space myself too, for other storage. Like, we have everything up on pallets right now, so there's equipment that we bring in, we put it up on pallets. So there's all set up, we have a forklift that goes back and forth throughout it's all open, and there's an opening between this 8,000 square foot of warehouse, there's an opening in between, so it spans across both sides. So I do have
what's the
equipment.
total your business is using? How many square feet?
Right now, I want to say, and if you want me to say that, you want me to declare that the vacant space, because right now there's still areas that aren't rented, but I would say right now, I probably operate this 5,000 here and probably about another 1,000 of it in the middle.
6,000.
About 6,000 square feet of the warehouse.
And the other guy was about 8, you said? 7,300?
Who? Oh, yeah, IPI, yeah, IPI, yes.
So that leaves you about 10,000 square feet?
And I do have other tenants in here, I have
Oh, okay.
subleases in
So,
here, yeah.
so the other 10,000 square feet is what you're going to talk about now?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk about it. Let's go with
Okay.
the other tenants.
So I have one tenant that operates a small section, and they do, it's called JC, something grocery. I can't remember the exact acronym. I know it's Josh, and I know, but they basically sell coffees on eBay, is really what they do, eBay and Amazon. They import, they review, he repackages it and sends them out. Pretty much every one of those tenants that are subleasing, that's what they do. The other tenant
Keep
is.
saying subleasing.
Subleasing, yes.
Why do you keep referring to them as a sublessee? Subleasing
From
yourself?
entertainment.
Is that what?
Yeah, subleasing from Entertainment on Wheels, because it had to be, because of the fact that it's one large space, and we're not delineating, because we're not putting up walls in between it, that's all open, like, just for the sake of fire exits and safety reasons. None of the tenants are actually, they're all basically sharing common areas.
But of the total space for Entertainment on Wheels, it's 6,000 square feet?
16, I have
16.
all 16 of it, technically. I have all 16, and I sublease out sections of it.
I got it.
And that's what, and we had to do it that way, just for the purposes, because
Understood.
people are in and
How
out.
many square feet of JC grocery?
Of the actual space, the living space, yeah, he's only about, about 200 square feet. Yeah, well, a lot of it's common area, there's like loading dock areas within that they all share, that's why it's like.
It's a room.
It's not even a room, yeah, it's an open area, but an open area room, basically, that's what it is, yep.
Very good. Who else do you have?
So then there's Karma Organic. They have another 4 basically areas of pallet area where they do their work. They do organic nail polishes and removers. Everything is non-toxic. None of the tenants in this building have anything to do with flammable and everything. The only ones that possibly could are IPI, but that's separate. I don't deal with them. So the town deals directly with them as a tenant. But so they do nail polish and all that. Again, they sell on eBay and Amazon mostly.
How many square feet?
So 4 bays and an office, I'd say they're 2, 4, maybe about 500 square feet.
How many people work there?
So he's got himself, his wife, maybe 2 employees and his son, so I'd say 5 at any given time. And that's on the high end.
And on JC Grocery, how many people?
It's himself and sometimes his father's with him. These are all like small individual operators.
And for your company, Entertainment on Wheels?
So Entertainment on Wheels, it's, right now it's me, myself, one assistant from my one company, 4 regular full-time employees. I have a warehouse. I have 1 person in the warehouse all day, and I have 3 myself and 2 others, so 4, and then the rest of them are all part-timers that come in, do jobs, and then go back out.
Understood.
They're like I hired them on a per diem basis.
Thank you.
Then the other tenant that's in there right now is, let's see, there's, what's his name? His name is John Goffredo. It is I'm sorry, I sent you that list with the actual tenant.
You got a Flippity Flip, which is somebody's proposing for personal goods?
Yeah, so he sells personal goods. It's another tenant. He has about 4 bays, again, maybe about only 400 square feet.
Did you say Flippity Flip?
It's called Flippity Flip LLC, yeah. So, yeah, they flip things. They basically buy CDs, DVDs. I've seen, like, it's all dry merchandise type things, and they buy and they sell stuff. That's what they do. And every one of these tenants is pretty much ideally for Amazon because of the way the loading dock is set up, that they can actually ship to Amazon for a much cheaper price. That's why they like being there.
Amazon has taken over the world.
Pretty much.
And there's also a candle shop, correct?
Yeah, and Candle Shop, that's the other one. So the
Candle Shop is another one.
Is another
But
tenant.
Before you get to that, Flippity Flip,
Yes.
how many square feet?
About 400 square feet.
Small.
Oh, yeah, they're all individually there.
How
They're
many
all taking
people?
little sections of the warehouse, of that 6,000.
How many people work there?
Him and his wife.
Okay. Candle Shop.
Okay, yeah, so the last one is a candle shop. He's called a candle shop, but he actually makes bath salts and bath bombs. He's a chemist, and all he does is he makes, he takes about 200 square feet of that. And that's at the designated area. Again, there's a lot of like aisle space in between for the forklift to get through, the loading dock area. There's an area where they do pallet wrapping, the bathrooms and all that, which are shared amongst all those tenants.
And correct that you're also entertaining a proposed lease with Families for Families?
Correct, yeah. So Families for Families is, it's a charitable organization. They actually are located out of Wyckoff. They help other families relocating or moving in. I don't know their whole entire thing, but they're a 501c3. And they basically just keep storage of like household goods that they just use to bring over to other places.
So they basically got household goods and clothing for families in need.
Correct.
In the Wyckoff area.
Yes. They're actually 1,000 square feet in the upper mezzanine, which is not here. Actually, it's designated here. You can see it on it's almost in the center space. You can see where it says mezzanine. So it's like there's a staircase. And it's strictly for storage. They don't operate any type of business up there. They just put storage up there and then they take it down.
So with that said, you testified, you're there on a daily basis, correct?
Yes, correct.
You have the opportunity to observe not only your tenants and the internal operations, but also the parking lot and the outside.
Yes.
On a typical day, pre-COVID, what have you observed as far as the number of parking spaces being used?
I mean, not all of them. I could say that, I mean, but then again, people are parking along here where they, technically they shouldn't be parking, but over the years, it's just become commonplace. This was prior to us purchasing the building. We saw the tenants, just to make it easier for them, I guess, to walk into the offices, they would just park there rather than park all the way down the hill, which is down in this area, and over here. Now, over here is where I have pretty much only the Entertainment on Wheels employees will come in. When they're coming to do a job, they'll park in here and then take out a vehicle and take that out.
What's your observation in connection with my question? What's your observation,
We've
number
never
of vehicles on any given day?
I mean, with the trailers and the IPI, like IPI has a series of trucks and we have our trailers. If you take all those into consideration, maybe, I'd say maybe 40 spaces.
I mean, just before he gets off the offices completely, so of the 23,371 square feet, approximately how much is office as opposed to warehouse?
So of the entire building, I would say almost 8,000 square feet, somewhere in that range. It's almost a split between like, because they have the section, if it was cut straight down the middle, it would be 8 and 8, but there's a little section here that's warehouse, there's a little section here that's warehouse. And they're almost the same size, so I would say about 7,000 and change in office and about 8,000 in warehouse.
And what about the other 7,300 square feet?
Oh, I'm sorry. When I said, I meant to say 12,000 and 11,000, because the building it's 23,000, and if you really cut it all the way across, it'd be about 11,000 would be offices and 12,000 warehouse. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the
I
office.
misspoke. I wasn't calculating.
No,
the
that's
one
all right. So
second.
the office use is slightly less than half now?
It is slightly used in half, yeah, I'd say right now, correct.
Half?
It's a little bit under half, yeah, because that little cutout that's right there, if that little cutout was there, I'd say it would probably be equal. It'd probably be dead even.
You're already over capacity in terms of parking. You got 32 spaces and you got 40 people, right?
Probably, yeah. Yeah. Well, that's with the vehicle, yeah.
Right.
So let me ask you this, Mr. Galasso, in connection with your acquisition of this building, resident here at Wyckoff, owning this building, using it for your own business, what were your goals in planning this and submitting this application?
The submitting this application? Well, I mean, at the time, warehousing wasn't that big. Office buildings were a lot more popular. So my goal was to, once US Laser left, which he did, I was gonna make the whole center section all offices. But again, speaking with town, they said you can't convert any of this building with the, the only way you can convert any of this part of the building is by adding more parking. So they said, because otherwise you have to leave basically the building the way it is. So like all the tenants that have come in are all operating under the same office structures, same open warehouse area that was originally designed.
So would it be correct to say that the concept in creating additional parking is to give you more flexibility for permitted uses in the building?
Yes.
And would it be also correct that one of your goals is to upgrade the building itself with some of the other improvements you're making?
Yes,
such as
make it look-
ADA, et cetera.
Yes, to make it look nicer, to add the, handicap parking, to relocate the dumpster, because currently where it's located, it's all the way on the far side over here, and it's, honestly, people go in there and neighbors come in and they start dumping stuff in there all the time.
So you
even with
bought
us
the
putting
building
locks.
in 18, I guess.
August 2018.
Did you remove the berm?
No, I did not, well, here's the situation.
Just gonna get there with
But no, I can answer.
Well, let's take it one
Sorry.
second. Before we get to that, Anthony, there's a couple questions. Let's stay on topic for the moment.
Yeah.
Do you rent parking?
Do I rent parking? No, I don't rent any parking out to anybody, no.
So all-
I know I'm not allowed to, and I will.
All the use, all the parking that's done there is
By
with-
tenants,
is by
correct.
tenants?
Yep. Mhm.
So the question on the berm.
Well,
I got a question about the building.
Yeah, before we get to the
How high
berm.
is the interior ceiling in there?
20-foot high ceilings. On the warehouse side, on the office side, standard about 10 foot, so it's, you know, left open. The other
You
area.
could almost technically put a floor in between and get 2 floors inside this building.
Correct. Technically you could, but there's, between fire issues and everything else, that we wouldn't even contemplate that, but yes,
Yeah, 'cause
technically.
You already have
yeah.
the mezzanine area, you said.
Yeah, the mezzanine area, and this is, again, it's strictly for storage. They won't allow any kind of people up there because of the fire exit, you know, to get out.
Oh, you don't have office space up there?
No, not mezzanine is strictly for, they're only allowed to leave it, like the original, when US Laser was there, he had it just all nuts and bolts, like literally rows of, you know, and that's exactly what the new tenant wants to go in, and all they want to do is just leave it for storage, where they can go in, get something and leave. Like, nobody will ever be working up there, there's no desks, there's no nothing. And I was specifically told that. Again, I've had extensive conversations with Mr. Depkin, the code enforcement official, about what I can do with the building. And again, I don't want to violate any kind of, I don't have a problem, I live in town, so, you know, that's why I clear everything with him before we did it.
How long have you been in town?
Since 2008.
Mr. Boccia, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, let's talk about the aforementioned trailers.
Yes.
How many of them do you have?
Okay, so I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 trailers right now. And 2 game buses.
I'm thinking about
2 game buses, 2 buses, and a box truck also. Those are my vehicles.
Well, it's the trailers that, the trailers are the vehicles that park in that gravel area in
Correct.
spaces 12 through 15?
Yes. But we don't go that far. I mean, it doesn't go that, trailers don't go all the way back there. I don't know why it's showing that big of a gravel area.
What's the combined length of those trailers?
So with the truck is about 17, 18 foot, and the trailer, our longest trailer, is a 34-foot trailer. It's an extended longest landscaping trailer that's out there.
About 50 feet?
About 50 feet, yes. Mhm.
So, Mr. Galasso, if I could go back to ask a question.
I had a, well, you want, go ahead.
Well, I kind of had a script here I want to go through, okay? I don't mind being interrupted, but I wanted to take, I was trying to,
Were we gonna get to trailers?
I was getting there.
Okay.
All right, Mr. Galasso, when you purchased this building, there were trucks on site, correct?
Yes.
I'd like you to explain to the board what you observed then and what your intentions were when you bought this building in locating your trailers there. Explain to the board the thought process.
All right, when I was looking at the building as, from an investment standpoint and also from my own personal use as an own, you know, one of the future tenants of there were trailers all parked out in this area, and there was trailers parked over here in this area.
What
But
type of trailers were parked there?
So they weren't, well, this one was a box trailer, kind of like mine, but it was a little bit shorter. It was maybe about I'd say maybe about a 20-footer. Mine are 27 and 34. Over here on this side, though, there were the flatbed type trailers because they were, and not that I'm looking to get anybody in trouble, but I know he was renting out to other people that they could store their trailers on there. I knew that after the fact. So, but landscaping style trailers, yeah. So there was landscaping trailers, but they were the low ones, like the kind they would put machinery on. And alongside there, in certain areas, I saw machines like Bobcats and that kind of stuff like that. So, but that wasn't my intention. My intention was to get rid of everybody and be able to put my trailers there.
And you got rid of them?
And yeah, after we bought the building, within a month or two, they were gone.
And so now, just explain to the board, looking at what we've marked as A1 on the plan, where are your trailers parked? Give us each of the trailers, approximate dimensions and where they're parked.
Okay, so again, in the corner over here in bay number 15 is that's the longest trailer, the 34-foot trailer, and then there's a pickup truck right now in front of it, but we kind of park it a little bit farther outward, just so we don't encroach that far back. Then there's another, that we park it a little bit outside the parking area, only because of the curbway is easy enough to move, and we leave it hitched only so that way, part of the reason why we leave it hitched is so we can get in and out quicker, from a standpoint of not making noise when we're up, when we need to hitch up, because of the going
When
back.
you talk about a pickup truck, that's the pickup truck that tows it?
The pickup truck that tows it, yes, I'm sorry, yeah. Pretty much I have 1, 2, 3 vehicles that do towing, and then I've got the 7 trailers. And then I have my own personal vehicle that
One of
tows.
the questions that was asked, I want to ask you now, in connection with backing up the vehicles that have motors in them, these trucks, is there backup beepers to these
The
trucks?
only one that makes noise is the box truck, which we park in the loading dock right alongside here. right alongside the building.
So the ones in the gravel area do not have the beepers
No
on the
beeping
back?
sound. Now, I will say that every one of our trailers has a generator on it. The generators, because when we go to events, everything's freestanding. So the generators, at the outset, we used to turn the generators on because we had to do updates to our vehicles, cool them down. But we used to put on the air conditioners before they would go out to parties just to keep it cool. We ended up putting electrical in the building to run straight out to there to quiet it. So now there's no sound at all. Like, in the last year or so, we've had that installed. We just run cables right out to the trailers, so they're running the 220 volts that we need, and then it saves me money, but also it keeps it quiet outside. So, which was to help out the neighbors.
The generators are powered up how?
Well, the generators are on the back of the pickup, or they're attached to the trailer.
But how do they get power in the
Oh, we
first
turn them
place?
on. Well, we gotta put gas in them and we turn them on. Yeah, we turn them on to operate them, the equipment that's inside. These are all gaming trailers, so they have all electronics in them, so we need to
When
have.
they're on site, right?
We do it on site, but we have to, but when because of the fact that there are video game stations, Xboxes, PlayStations, Nintendo Switches, all those kind of things, they always need updates. So that, you can't get to site and do the update, we would do the updates on site.
So you turn them on.
We had to turn them on, we do the update and then
How
turn them
long
on.
does that take?
Sometimes it could take like an hour, and sometimes it could take like 3 or 4 hours,
You
depending
do
upon.
that in the morning, you do it at night?
Usually in the afternoons, when my staff gets in. Like I said, I have my warehouse guy, that's what his job is to maintain and make sure all equipment is ready for when it goes out.
And it's done by the gravel area?
It's done by that's those, yeah. I mean, we have the bus, the bus was all the way over here, and, we could do it over there, but that was no issue over there. But the bus was also shorter, so we were able to park it in this area and kind of we would put the back wheel right up to the edge, and it would hang a little bit into the gravel area that was, because there's all gravel area over here too. Like,
Now, correct to say that based upon putting this new electrical service in, you're not operating the generators?
No.
And where the
we
trucks
don't,
are
no,
parked?
we don't turn the generators on anymore.
So now explain to me, what, if any, improvements you've made out there as it pertains to those parking areas where the trucks are, where the gravel is?
Okay.
The question being asked about berms being moved, et cetera.
Okay, so
Explain that.
when we first purchased the building, I don't know if anybody's ever been there, but there was trees overhanging everywhere. This whole side where the brook is, literally, it was about 3 feet going over into the gravel, onto the pavement itself. So I brought in a landscaper, and I told him I wanted to clear out and basically run it along the line, so that way along the pavement, so the vehicles could drive through, especially my trailers, because my trailers are all, they're all wrapped, so we wanted to make sure they weren't getting scratched by my drivers driving around. They came along this side, the lower side, I guess that's the south side? No. Yeah, the south side. So the south side over here, there was a lot of dead trees, a lot of dead twigs, and hanging from the pines, which I know are pines, but they were all hanging down. All the dead branches, I had them get rid of the dead branches. Anything live, we kept up. Part of the reason why I wanted to make sure any of the trees that were like there, literally the owner, before we were purchasing the building, he said that winter before, a tree, his son was doing their snow plowing, he got out of his truck to go, shovel, and a tree literally smashed right through his car, because the trees in the area were they dropped. But anyway, we cleared out, we cleaned up this area over here right up to the wall. We just basically trimmed everything. We cut everything back just to make it more
You keep saying cleared out, you mean trimming it?
trimming.
Or
Oh,
taking
no,
it out?
no, trimming. I'm sorry, trimming. When I say clear out, I meant right up to the line where the
It's overgrown, you mean?
Yeah, it was crazy overgrown. Yeah, the one trailer that was down here in this one section, you couldn't even see. There was trees all the way around it. I don't know, he must have had it there 10 years that it was never moved.
Do you have photographs of what it looked like?
I probably have some, yeah. Yep. And now, when the tree guy was here doing all the work, he pointed out a couple of trees to me, and he said, that tree, which is on the slant, is gonna come crashing down. And there was 1 or 2 trees here, and a couple of trees right here, and he said, these trees are looking like they're gonna come down. He goes, you can leave them up, and then I'll deal with it later, or you just get rid of them while I'm here right now. And I said, well, if you're already here, and he gave me a good price for it, I told him, I said, get rid of the trees. But he only took down trees that were in danger of coming down. And I can tell you honestly, if you look around a lot of these trees in this berm area, which hasn't been maintained, you can see the vines. I mean, some of the vines are probably 4 to 5 inches wide, that are wrapping around the trees, they're smothering the trees. So I've gone in there over time myself, just with a hacksaw, just to break the vine, just because I don't want to see the whole tree get ripped down again. Because there's still a tree that's in this area right over the berm, you can see it every time the wind hits, it looks like it's gonna just come crashing out. So,
Now, what about? the-
Mr. Whitaker, it's about 10:30 now, probably appropriate time to stop.
no problem.
Can we pick up with your next question when we resume? I guess?
Absolutely.
All right, I appreciate it. I know it's getting late and some people got to get up early, so. And you're going to bring some more additional things to the next meeting. Anybody who's out in the audience, like I said, to support whatever you're going to testify to when Mr. Whitaker's done with his, I can't tell you what to do, but I would suggest pictures and maybe some measurements would be helpful to support what, as opposed to just telling us. So with that, we will pick up at the next meeting, which is.
I just have one thing to add.
Yes.
Just so we don't forget, just a stipulation, because Mr. DeGennaro brought it up in the work session. The deed that is required for the wetlands delineation and the LOI attached to it, I will give a copy of that recorded deed to the town when I get it back. I think you're probably aware, reporting is not going very well down at the county right now.
So it's been sent for
But we're
recording.
gonna get, I think my office sent it, or it will get done, but I'm stipulating that it will be done.
Okay, thank you. And Maureen, when's the next meeting? Okay, so the next meeting for everybody who may be tuning in on YouTube or in the audience is October 14th. The work session will be at 7:30. That's a Wednesday night, correct? And the regular business meeting will be at 8 o'clock. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Take care, guys.
Have a good evening.
Thanks, Maureen. Oh, I'm sorry. Motion, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Second? Seconded by Glenn. Opposed?
Oh, yeah, I'm opposed. Thank you.